Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 471, take 2. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. How many times are we going to re-record this? So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
Jim and I already did this once, or at least a portion of it once, and we had an issue with the file, actually, which happens from time to time. Your response was almost poetic to this. You're kind of like, this used to bug us. We're kind of at this point where let's just re-record and make it happen. On this episode, I'm very excited to say we're talking about Wonder Woman #2, Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns Rebirth #1, New Superman #1, Nightwing Rebirth #1, Justice League Rebirth #1, Detective Comics 936, and Batman #2. It's a packed episode. We also have 3 great listener voicemails. One of them we're going to be talking about that Dark Knight hardcover that just came out recently. So we got some great things that packed on this episode, and thank you for joining us. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on at DCBService.com?
Come on, you know what I'm going to talk about. Bundles, bundles, bundles. Once again, they're continuing their support of Rebirth, and I'm very grateful for that. And this time we have 4 separate bundles. And I like how DCBS is doing this, where they're taking like the bi-monthly ones, the brand new ones that they're just introducing, and the monthly ones that they've had out there. We got 4 separate bundles. Each of these 4 different Rebirth bundles are, of course, 50% off. But that's, of course, not the only bundle. We've got some great Vertigo bundles, continuing their support of Vertigo, which I'm very excited and very happy about. All 10 Vertigo titles, also 50% off. That one's $21.90 for all 10 titles. Plus, of course, if you're a variant cover collector like I am, they have these great DC variant covers, the full bundle, all 49 variants. Again, that's actually not again. That's a 45% off, but it's all 49 of the Rebirth variant bundles together. So check out DCBS. Check out the bundles.
Over at InStockTrades.com, Jim, on this episode, we do talk to Mike Gordon about Dark Knight, A True Batman Story by Paul Dini and Eduardo Risso. And it's 128 pages. It's one of those DC's original hardcovers. It's fantastic. I know you haven't read it yet, but it's one of those we actually talk about our experience with getting this one. It's a really special book. It's $22.99 regularly, 45% off, only $12.64 from InStockTrades.com. So if you missed this one, you're really getting a hardcover at a trade paperback price, so definitely check that out over at InStockTrades.com. And we appreciate both of those companies for supporting our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
If it's 4 bundles, wouldn't it be bundles?
Actually, it's really 5 bundles, so I should throw a 5th bundle in there.
That's a lot of bundles.
Yeah.
Let's talk some comics.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
Jim, our first discussion this episode is going to be talking about Wonder Woman #2, the second Rebirth issue. This is actually the beginning of year 1. I am loving this book. What I really love about this one, I'm Wonder Woman happy in general. I think the film, recently they've been showing online all kinds of images straight from the set of the new Wonder Woman movie. I think it's the one thing, like, DC's nailing Wonder Woman, and it really feels to me like this is DC's Iron Man. And the reason why I'm saying that is, remember when the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man movie kicked off and how it just kind of launched this Marvel fervor, this idea of, wow, these Marvel movies, we're really excited about them. It was, the Robert Downey Jr. was the perfect casting. He was the right guy. He was Iron Man, and just people started getting behind this character that traditionally isn't the character you think of as the Marvel flagship character. He's not Captain America. He's not Spider-Man. Those are the or the X-Men. Those are the characters that traditionally, those teams are the ones you thought of when you thought of Marvel first. Not that Iron Man was a low-rent character or anything. I don't mean anything negative about Iron Man as a character. He just isn't, the big 2 or 3 of Marvel at the time. Things have shifted because of the quality of that movie. This is the same thing with Wonder Woman. Now, Now, it's kind of strange to say that with a member of the Trinity, but let's be honest. People typically think of Batman and Superman. People know who Wonder Woman is, but it's always been this thing as far as trying to pin down who Wonder Woman is, and, you know, people know her backstory, but they've said that over the years her backstory's changed, and, you know, really kind of pinning down who the character is kind of hard for explaining that character. I honestly think since the George Perez run, straight on through to now this run, there's been some really solid identification of the qualities of Wonder Woman, what makes this character interesting, that do go back to the character's roots, but have modernized her for today. I am so excited for that movie. I'm excited to see her in comics. I wish that show Amazon actually became a thing, just because I want to see more Wonder Woman. I'm very into this character right now. At E3 this year, they introduced a trailer for the new God of War game for PlayStation, and it's kind of the next chapter of it. It's launching a brand new version of the series. The thing I've always thought about that game, and I've mentioned this on the show over the years, I've always thought the God of War engine, that premise and the way that that game plays, would be the ultimate perfect Wonder Woman game. I just think that her mythology leads to that, her fighting leads to that, everything about the character, and the engine is really good for doing story-driven games, which I would want the Wonder Woman story involved in it. You know, a story of Wonder Woman. It doesn't have to be her origin or anything like that. It just has to be a really good Wonder Woman story. I am so thrilled. Jeff Johns is associated with the script in a big way. He's not the only one. He partnered up with somebody, and I would be remiss if I said who it was right now, because I'm forgetting, but also Zack Snyder was involved. But Jeff Johns is one of the principal players in the script now. That has me excited, too. Steve Trevor looks great in it. Everything looks really, really cool. They show this sequence with Wonder Woman where she's got her bracelets on, but there's also, like, these leather straps around her hands. Like, I want to watch her fight. Gal Gadot, casting for Wonder Woman? Anybody who, like, had their doubts about her, first of all, Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition is what you should be watching. But second of all, the idea of her now being in a focused movie, I could not be more excited. And I really do compare it to Iron Man in that sense. My level for excitement of that is the same way it was with the casting of Robert Downey Jr. for Iron Man. I think this movie is going to be the one that hits it out of the park.
Yeah. It's funny, as you're going, I'm just nodding my head, singing the Wonder Woman theme in my head. I'm not going to sing it out loud. I'll be a nice guy. But yeah, I'm very Wonder Woman happy right now. And it's funny with this whole, with the year one story in my head, when we were talking about initially, you know, about this being the early years, I actually was thinking this was going to go as far back as like her birth, and we would see her brother being born and the separation and all that. And of course, the whole time we're saying a year one story, but for some reason that just didn't lock in my head. I wasn't expecting a Wonder Woman this age. I was expecting, you know, a much younger. So when I started reading, I'm like, oh, this is going to be cool. It was one of those things where it was a nice little surprise for me, you know, even though it shouldn't have been a surprise because I kept saying this is going to be Wonder Woman year one. But for me, this is really my first Wonder Woman year one. It was done before. It was done, with Perez and whatnot. But for me, this is like, the first time I'm really getting a solid story that's going on a monthly basis where it's going to come out and it's going to build the story. So I'm very excited about that. Plus, you got some brilliant art here. This is one of those great team ups of wonderful writing of Greg Rucka, but the art of Nicholas Scott, colors by Romulo, and it's Fajardo Jr. and Jody Wynn on letters. And I wanted to give full credit to full art team because I absolutely love the look of this book. And it wasn't even just, I love the facial expressions. I love the emotion that is conveyed, but also just these massive backdrops and these, when you start showing these panoramic views of Themyscira, I was just like, man, this was just a true joy on my art read through, where I was just sitting there staring at the images, not worrying about the words, not worrying about the story, just enjoying the artwork.
One of the things that I really love, first of all, Nicholas Scott's one of my favorite artists, so having her on this book, the year one sequences, is just, to me, a pure joy. The care and love on the whole creative team, echoing your comments, is really apparent here. This book's about balance for me. And what I really love is the balance of Diana's backstory that's almost told in real time. What I love is this takes a certain slice before the contest. It kind of gives you an idea of what life's like in Themyscira, what relationships are like on Themyscira, between the women and how they view Diana, and how Diana's this great beauty and they're in awe of her great beauty. But she's also this very kind person and they're drawn to that too. And how, they're vying for her affection. But it's not overdone or overstated. It's very subtle in there. She has friends, and then it's clear that some of those friends have feelings more than that, and it really just feels very natural and just like you would expect any other relationship. And I really liked the balance of how that was done in the midst of telling more of Themyscira's lore and their history and getting the idea of how royalty works there and just how daily life works at Themyscira. I really liked that. When I mentioned balance, though, you got to also take a look at Steve Trevor's backstory. This is a guy that we're supposed to believe a Wonder Woman would fall in love with, or would eventually bond with and have that strong bond, the same way that she would with Superman. And this is the New 52 Wonder Woman, where we've seen her have a relationship with Superman. You want to see backstory wise. Not only why did Sheila fall for Steve Trevor, but why did Steve Trevor fall for her? What was it in relationship-wise? You can't get there if you don't develop that character. Steve Trevor's a character I've always liked. I grew up watching the Wonder Woman television series in the 70s. I loved it. Loved that show a lot. One of the great things about this particular comic is it brings that to comics. And what I mean it brings that to comics, that show was great because Steve Trevor was such a regular reoccurring character. You got to really know him. I think you need that in the comics just as much, and sometimes he becomes such a background character that you forget why there was the draw. There's a danger that happens to Lois Lane with that at times, too, in comics when she's not as prominently featured. You forget why, what is the attraction with Superman? Some of our favorite stories in the New 52 were ones where we were like, man, I'm loving the Superman-Diana relationship, but geez, Lois is awesome, and I can see why Superman would be drawn to her. And you can see what he's seeing quality-wise in her and the trusting relationship that's developed there. I like that this book gives me that same belief in her relationship with Steve Trevor because of the fact that I'm seeing Steve's interactions with his comrades. I'm seeing Steve both in and out of the uniform. I'm seeing Steve as the friend, as the godfather, all these little pieces, as the leader, leading a squad in. I see why they'd look up to him in the way that characters look up to Nightwing as kind of like the big brother character. Steve's got a swagger to him, but it's not overstated to the point where he's cocky. It's more of he's like this nice together guy who's got leadership skills. You admire him. You'd want to follow him. He's just got that thing to him. And I think that's a really important character development in this and balance of both characters being developed, I think, equally. And I just think it works for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're saying balance, because that I think is one of the absolute strengths of this book, that they're taking their time, giving us a nice balance between Diana and Steve, and I love that because going into this issue, that they've got the relationship, that there's a connection there, and on one hand, you always thought. I personally always thought it was kind of like a physical attraction. Diana's this amazing beauty, but you're thinking that's pretty much they really did, in my head, the way I was always reading it is it was kind of like he was physically attracted to her because obviously, it's Wonder Woman, but what we're seeing here is the personality traits that they each are sharing. We're seeing, and they're doing a great way where they say one part of the story, his part, her part, his, and they flip-flop back and forth, and you start seeing each one of them are having those same common experiences, having that same kind of thought process. And I loved, even in the very beginning, when Steve and his buddy are lost, oh no, they're not lost, just the GPS is broken. Steve is navigating by the stars. You flip the page, and it's Diana gazing at the stars. They kept doing that constantly throughout this, an archery and a foot shooting range, various, her socializing with her friends, him socializing with his friends. They kept going back and forth, showing these two people who grew up in dramatically different worlds, but they have in that same core of who they are, very similar personalities. I love the fact that they gave us that moment and they actually let us into Steve's life so we know who he is. We know he's not just physically attracted to this beautiful, amazing woman. There's something connected between the two of them. There's a personal bond because, as you say, you always question, you always love the stories where they completely remove any doubt. why Superman loves Lois Lane,
Yeah.
why he's connected, why this man with godlike powers is in love with this mere mortal woman, because she's not just a mere mortal. She is something amazing. She is strong. She is beautiful. She's intelligent. She's fearless. You see those qualities in her. You're like, yes, that's why Superman would want her. Now we're getting that. Now we're getting that with the Diana and Trevor story. And I'm so happy about that, because it's funny. It didn't even click in my head, but something did with the old TV show. I used to always love Steve Trevor because he had that style to him. I was always like, I used to watch the TV show going, man, he's super cool. And it was just the way he always had that groove and that flow to him, where there's at times he's getting rescued by Wonder Woman, but he never lost a step. He never lost a swagger. Why? Because they were a team. They were partners, and they did a really great job with that partnership. We're going to see that now with these two. We're going to see why these two work well together. We're going to see this relationship, friendship, whatever you're going to classify it, grow into something special. And I'm very excited to see this grow. And it's funny because I was always on the team Diana Clark where I wanted to see those two stay together. Seeing the backdrop, seeing the birth of the relationship kind of has me hoping, hey, maybe the new 52 they'll have them together in present day. Maybe we'll actually get to see these two kids get back together. So I was like, it was funny how one issue completely can change me and start putting me towards the other team.
But that's really important, I think, and that's part of the balance I was talking about. I'm glad you're feeling that way, because I was feeling the same way. And I think it can't be something where you're just like, well, because they've always been together. That dissipates quickly because there's no substance to it. In this case, you start really liking both of these characters that you want to see them converge. The other thing that I like is, they're telling a new version of the Year One story of Wonder Woman, but they're expanding it. In a way, I really liked the George Perez run because it kind of did this, where it took Diana back to her roots, took its time kind of letting Diana evolve into Wonder Woman. This is doing the same thing. It's letting Diana evolve into Wonder Woman. We're seeing that. And I really like this choice because it's modernizing the story while sticking to the core of what really works in it and adding some new elements. I love the bits where Steve and her are both like at nighttime looking out and longing for something else. And I think if you asked both of them, they couldn't tell you what. But, it's like this sense of, I want something more. I am something more. I need to be something more. I'm looking for something more. And I don't know, it could be all of those things at some level, some combination of the two. When you meet somebody who's a kindred spirit who's also in that place, you kind of know. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of both in that same attitude and mood, and your view on the world is the same. So you can really see from this issue, these two are converging on the same path towards where they need to go for their own futures. It's interesting to see because sometimes when you're longing for something else, you can see how two people would converge from that, but sometimes the directions they head in to get to those places are where they eventually split apart. I could see these two weaving in and out of each other's lives because of that. It's an interesting setup and very well done because this feels very real to me. I'm very interested. I'm with you when you said, I want to see these two kids get back together. I'm like, yeah, Jim's right. I want to see that too. I want to see where this goes because I like them both. And that's something that's really well done in this issue. I'm liking following these Rebirth issues in particular because of the fact that, you get that first one shot that they do to kind of give you this idea of what the status quo is. Then the rest of them, the onus is on them to kind of keep that momentum going, to keep the excitement going. The excitement's very high for me right now. We, historically, as a podcast, have kind of picked our favorite books of the week and kind of, said, let's talk about these two, let's talk about these two, and, kind of pulled together about 4 or 5 books to talk about on the podcast. With this particular event, and I don't know how long we'll be able to keep it up as more titles are being released, to be able to go through all of them, but we generally can we try to talk about all of them? So, that's one of our goals, to try to, if we don't get to every single one, to get to as many as we can, not because of the fact that we have to do it, because it's genuinely very hard to pick which ones we want to talk about because the excitement level is just through the roof right now. I'm curious to see if the momentum keeps going 2 and 3 issues in of all these books as you go through. Because this is really the 3rd Wonder Woman issue now, and I can't stop reading and enjoying this. My rereads are increasing of all these titles. And sometimes a reread for me is just kind of I just want to browse through the issue again. That's fun. I'm really excited by what DC's doing in their publishing output right now. I really hope the momentum keeps going as they continue more of these releases. This book's fantastic.
Oh God, yeah, and as you said, I like how you mentioned sometimes your reread is just a browse through, and I get so much. It's weird. I get more out of that for some reason when I'm just casually just enjoying it. Like one of the most recent rereads I just did, I started really taking notice to how and the different times they have Diana dressed, and they have the Amazons dressed, and how they've got the kind of the casual gowns and the more formal gowns, and they've got the battle armor for when they're practicing when they're practicing for various contests and fighting, and just the general chill and hang out. And I really appreciated the fact that they're going into the Amazonian culture, and they're going into the style, simple stuff like showing them when Diana's on the archery, she's got the bracelet on just the one wrist, because that's where it's the on her left hand, because it's when the string from the bow comes back, and that's it's a wrist guard and whatnot. I don't know what the technical term is, but she would just have it on the one hand because that's where it is. And then you go in, you're showing Steve in the shooting range and things, and you see each of them going through their different kind of, as I said, you see one in one world, one in the other, and each one has their own personal moment. Steve, when he's hanging with his buddies, has got jeans and a shirt on. Diana, when she's at the formal pageant, she's got her robes, and when she's hanging out with her friends, she's less clothed. But it's still just those moments where you see these comparisons. But I absolutely love the scenes where you see them both just sitting there, just kind of staring off. Both of them just staring off and there's missing something. They don't know what it is yet, but they're missing that one thing in their life. And I love the fact that I'm getting all that emotion, I'm getting all that feeling, not from words, not from thought bubbles, but from the expressions on their face. I'm getting it from the artwork, and I'm absolutely just thrilled by that.
Speaking of the artwork, you mentioned earlier landscapes, and I'm looking at that scene with Kachi Faster, where she's riding the horse through the field. The thing that I love about that is not only is that field lush and just gorgeous, but the horse, there's a majesty to it, but there's also an excitement. She's loving this. I took my horseback riding lessons when I was a kid, and it was only for a year or two tops. It was when I was young. My parents gotten divorced, and one of my dad's teachers actually had a farm where they raised horses. I just had a really good time with it. It was only in an arena, and then we went sometimes outside into their, enclosed area out there. So I'm not saying that I was a good horseback rider, but one of the things that's great about horses is there is this sense of being on this majestic animal. This really captured that beauty. And I've seen more people who are really accomplished horseback riders. Certainly not me, but it's amazing when you see the horse, just really is racing along, and the rider seems to be in unison. This captured that majesty. Rider and horse kind of just getting what they're doing. There's a relationship there. There's a flow to it. And I really thought the artwork captured that kind of concept. I love, though, how the landscape changed when you hit this tree, though. And that's where Themyscira has to have a mystical quality to it, right? Where you encounter these areas where you're like, these are people that deal with gods, and there's magical stories associated with them. So you're going to hit these places where you're like, what's the story behind that tree? And what does this mean? And, and it takes you out of that, just this majestically beautiful moment, and takes you to something else very, very quickly. That's why I really said I'd love this to be a video game. I want to run around in this world. I really do. And I mean, it'd be a lot of fun to play a game in this world. 'Cause I'm a big gamer. I love, playing games where it's story driven. I want to feel like when I'm going to locations that they're interconnected somehow, and it means something when you get there, and there's going to be some kind of event that happens to you that you can be a part of. This is tailor-made for that. I mean, this is a game being developed before my eyes. I would play this as a role-playing game, where you could just, and I would love to flip-flop between Diana and Steve and maybe other characters in the story to see different perspectives in order to enjoy this. I love this. This is just really fantastic.
And I tell you, that scene you're talking about, it's funny because when I first read it, I was like, oh, that looks really cool. And then second and third read-through, something kind of really dawned on me how the tree actually isn't there. The tree was there for Diana to get bit by the serpent, so she would have this vision. So it would start the whole process, and it's, even later on when dealing with the surgeon, they're saying, hey, this is, the will of the gods kind of stuff. And it's the whole mystical side of it, who actually put the tree there. Well, that one panel, that last panel where they're carrying Diana to the surgeon, on the tree is an owl. Now, it could just simply be an owl, or that could be the messenger, because there is a Greek goddess, Athena, goddess of war, wisdom and war, and her familiar is the owl. And part of me is now wondering, was that whole thing was that supposed to be a thing from Athena saying, hey, this is coming now? Because you think about it, this preleads the arrival of man, the whole battle, the whole, again, wisdom and battle, wisdom and war, however you want to refer to her as. But, it was something that it dawned on me in multiple read-throughs when I noticed the little owl sitting there. Now, I could just be completely reading more into this, but part of me was wondering, is maybe that's who gave with that god? Are we going to have even more interactions with the gods?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know. I'd be interested to see where this goes with the story. I don't think there's anything. It's funny, as you're saying all that, I'm just kind of nodding and going, wow, I didn't think of it that way, but sure. I like when there's possibilities in stories. So you're outlining some potential possibilities. And I like when, we do this a lot on the show, and it's where you and I often get in our greatest debate. It's when we think off page and we're in conflict, because I see it one way, you see it the other way, and it really never is one person being right or wrong. It's speculating, which, we don't know. So how do you know if you're right or wrong? Who cares? This is part of the fun of a story like this, is when you do think beyond the page and you want to know more about what's going on with these characters because of it. I really loved outlining this a little bit more into the relationship of Diana and her mother, because sometimes, these negative events happen with Diana where there's a conflict between her and her mother, and you never get back to why did these two, why does she care? I really like when they set up this, they really had a close mother-daughter relationship, and I really like that. I like seeing those moments. I think they're important to establish, because then you can play around and add conflict between the two of them, and the conflict means more. It means more when it's between two people who really do love each other, like, Diana does her parent. And it'll be interesting to see where this goes as the contest hits. Here's the thing. I've seen so many variations on the contest now. I am super excited to see it again. I want to see what this team does with it. And that's the part that really has me excited. It's when you introduce something in such a way that you're like, they are expanding this story in their own way. They're adding some new elements in. They're getting all the beats right about what should be there. But they're telling us more of the story. They're telling us the other parts of it that we didn't know. They're adding in some elements that fit a reboot. And they're just getting it all right. And I love that part of it, because this is really, to me, a lot of fun and interesting. This is when you do an origin the right way. Year One Batman is the Batman Year One. I remember when that was being done. I was a kid. I was Batman junkie. So it's like, you're telling the Batman origin again. I get it. I've read a lot of the Batman origin. Frank Miller hit that out of the park. And I think, there's times where they do this, do a Year One story, and it's kind of like, okay, you kind of did it again. Great. But because they don't give it enough space, enough issues to really develop it and really do something new. I like the way that they're doing this. Alternating it weeks. We're getting a couple issues of Wonder Woman every month. You're telling a story in present day. You're telling us a story in the past. We are moving her forward in continuity in present day. But I've already heard, I follow Nicola Scott on Facebook, and she's already talked about how some of her character designs in the past influence the future. They're, changed, obviously, to match the future, which means they're doing things in Year One that are going to become a part of the mythos in present day. I'm excited for that, because there's a great synergy then, because you got the same writer on both. The art team's working together between both. I just think it's really neat, and I'm glad this book is being handled a little differently than the rest, just because it gives it a unique flavor, and I am just incredibly Wonder Woman happy because of this. The lasso, wait, and I'm sorry, I know I'm chomping at the bit right now, Jim. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the lasso sequence, because I want to know what they're going to teach us about the lasso, because you don't do something like that and present it like that if you're not going to teach us something new, right? So that was not a throwaway. I love the way that was set up there. I would actually be very disappointed if that was just a throwaway.
Oh God, no! That could have just been a teaser for what will be the lasso, especially because Diana's learning about it after this whole vision, after this whole mystical thing that happened. So this is, again, it's a premonition as to what to come, but I think we're gonna learn a little bit more about the lasso, and I think that for me is always a really enjoy when you start learning more about the lasso. That it's not just the ultimate truth teller. It doesn't make people tell the truth. There's something more beyond it, and I like that notion that there's a difference. It's not just compel the truth. It's actually pulling into the person's soul. It's actually looking into them and kind of a connection and a bonding. And I'm so hoping we're going to get more details. We're going to get more presentation and just where it goes from there. This is one of those things where I was just like, looking at the different stuff, like, simple stuff like her crown, Diana's crown, it's a simple version of what we see later on, but we know that makes sense for how she is. She is a princess. She needs to have the tiara, but it's not just this formal decoration. And when Diana kind of changes her costume later on, in the present day, she goes back to a more simpler crown, a more simpler look. It's not the same big flashy Wonder Woman thing she had in the beginning when, again, it's an evolution of the character. So it's kind of going back to what she was. And I loved how the fact that we have this, early version of what she's going to be in the future playing out. I was just like, these are stuff like that where it's just like, man, this is how you do, a story. And like you, I am very excited to see how this team tells the contest, because it's going to be a little bit different, especially because they're doing the contest, after being quote unquote kind of invaded or whatnot, or they've been discovered, and just everything that's playing out with how they have the men there. And I so want to see where this goes, and how we know how it goes, but we know where it goes, but I want to see how it gets there. And I think that for me is always the joy of a story where how it's going to end, but you're still pumped to see it actually play out.
I would actually argue, though, that her crown or tiara is actually much more, I don't want to say ornate, but it's much more warrior-driven in it. I don't think it gets simpler, and I know where you're going with this. This isn't a contradiction of you. It's more of just kind of sharing what my thought process is. So I don't want to necessarily use your words, because it's not about that. I like the fact that she goes as she's definitely the queen's daughter here, and you're seeing that. And I like how you called it a crown at first. I really like that, so I want to use that terminology because I think it's cool that you're pointing it out that way. Then it goes to kind of like that tiara that we're used to seeing, and I know this is influenced by the film, and where that's going. But if you take a look at the modern version of it now, it is more ornamented. Like there's more going on with it, but it looks more like it's built for a warrior queen, a warrior princess in what she's wearing there. And I like the crown analogy there, because that really struck me when you were saying that. I don't know that it's simple as much as it shows who she is and her background, I think, more. I like that it's a nod to the tiara, because I think that's an important part of Wonder Woman's costume. I've always liked it. I've liked that, we talk about the 70s show. I like she used to take it off and throw it and use it like a boomerang and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know. It aerodynamically doesn't make any sense at all, but it was cool. It's no crazier than the Batarang, especially with the fact that she has a magic background. But I really like how there's that sense of warrior in it. I liked it in the film. I do like it here. I'm usually not a huge fan of films translating over to the comics, where it like pushes costume changes and stuff. I'm not usually a fan of it. In this case, the film version I thought so captured Wonder Woman that I really like it here. I like what they've done. I like that they're not 100% beholden to it, but man, they're using the right elements from the film version that I think really captures what I think is the warrior look of Diana that I really enjoy.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're in agreement here. I think we're using different phraseologies, but we're both seeing it the same way. Mm-hmm. It is that and it's funny because recently been watching some Viking stuff, and you see a lot of like with the the really good Viking movies and Viking TV shows, they'll show the royalty on the Viking clan. They have a little bit different, but again, like with Diana, it's that warrior crown, it's that warrior tier. It is a signet that shows their rank, but it never takes, so it doesn't become fluff and non-functionality. There is something to it, and I think that is something you really see in one in this version here, but then her newer version that she has in present day. It has that again. We keep throwing out warrior, but that is I love how we're not losing that. And it's neat because we're seeing the warrior side. We're seeing the combative side of the Amazons. We're seeing that they do kick some serious butt, but we're seeing just the life of them. We're seeing just the peace and harmony that they live with themselves and in nature, and just I'm thrilled to have this story going along with the current story, which is some really neat stuff. So this is a great time for Wonder Woman, and especially because this is a twice a month story. So we're going to keep every 2 weeks, bam, 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 get another edition of Wonder Woman. I am just so thrilled by this.
I agree. That part is, to me, the frequency is really important, and I don't know how successful it's going to be if they keep doing these bi-weekly. I hope it is, though, because to me, I like this better than doing like a Wonder Woman series and then a Wonder Woman Year One series, calling it Secrets of Wonder Woman or something like that. I really like that they're taking some of their main titles and doing this bi-weekly event. I hope people are liking this, because I like it like Batman in the case of that. We've got Batman and Detective Comics running, and both of them are running bi-monthly. I like that better than having 4 separate Batman books. Same thing with Superman. I think this is it, because the stories continue. And I like that these, because the fact the same writer's writing them, what's happening in the past is going to influence the present. I want to see that. And when the Year One story's done, I don't know what their plans are. I can't wait to see what they do. Is it going to be more tales from the past? Is it going to come to present day, and then we're just going to continue stories kind of like what the other book's doing? I don't really care. I like the delivery. I like getting these books more frequently. To me, it's a serialized medium, and you're continuing the serial for me. You and I were fans of the Superman area with the bullets. Where it was every week it was a different Superman book, but they were continuing this story. And I always quite liked that because it was the frequency of the delivery. I felt like it was real time, like, wow, man, Wednesday again, and I'm continuing the story that I'm digging. And I do think it gives writers some more breathing room to delve a little deeper into the character relationships in their world, because you've got that frequency. You can spend a little bit more time on some things that you can't always do in a month, where you're like, I'm only going to get 12 issues this year. I want to pay off something big by the end of the year. In this case, you're getting 24. You can do a lot more in 24 issues, as we've seen evidence from like the weeklies and things like that we really enjoy because of the fact that it's a different sort of delivery system. I like that they're playing around with this. Whether or not every title's successful with this path, the ones that are right now, which, really all of them that I'm enjoying right now are really doing a good job with it. I hope the momentum stays, because I like the frequency. I really feel like I'm more involved in the story. I remember more because it's more frequent. I feel like there's more depth being told here. I like this immediacy. I really do. I often like when I stockpile books, because of the fact that I get to read 2 and 3 issues at a time, and I feel like I grasp more of the story and really get more into it. I think this has that same appeal without having to stockpile. I like the immediacy. And I do think it does draw me to my weekly reads a lot more because of the immediacy of it. I don't know if you're having that experience. That's what's happening for me right now, and I like that. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm laughing with you because I'm doing that as well. One of the things that I'm jumping on is the digital format, as well as I've got the paper coming, because I can't wait. A lot of times, I'll do the digital for the show because it's easier for me to have it up on the screen when we're talking, so I'm not flipping through pages. But I'm picking up these Rebirth issues digitally because I don't want to wait another day, and it's really just one day. One extra day I have to wait. I don't want to wait that. And I'm jumping on and I'm grabbing the rebirths and I'm reading these things and I'm just attacking it. And there is, again, same thing you mentioned where it's that boom, boom, boom. Every 2 weeks I'm getting something. I'm getting a story. Whether, and especially like with Wonder Woman, that last page they show in 2 weeks, number 3, Lies, Part 2. And then August 10th, Year 1, Part 2. The contest begins. Just that notion, that concept, like, yeah, all right. Because as cool as this story, I really am also digging the present day with her dealing with Cheetah and, Diana needing to find Themyscira and everything that's going on, all the craziness that's going on in her present day life, but plus all the stuff going on in the past. This is very, very, it's funny because I really don't like saying, X title is my favorite, because there's so many times when I say that, and then I pick up a new book and I'm reading, like, oh, this is my new favorite. And I keep flip-flopping and jumping and forth. But Wonder Woman is one of those titles that I could not get rid of. This would be you can only pick 5 titles. Wonder Woman right now would be one of those titles that I couldn't give up because I am so excited for this. I want to see this. I want to see the Trinity. All 3 members have some really, mega mondo stories that are absolutely pleasing for all, and show everybody that this is why she's a member of the Trinity. This is why she is one of the top tiers. She's the one of the alphas in the DC universe, and we're getting that in this title now, and hopefully other people are going out and saying, hey, I wasn't a Wonder Woman reader. Pick her up. These are some great stories and some beautiful artwork. It's a 1-2 combo punch that I'm very just, oh my God, amazed with.
Can I take that away from Wonder Woman for a second and just say in general with any of these, we all have different tastes. If you're picking up a book that you're digging and you know of somebody who should be reading it, point them to it. If you went with somebody to see Batman v Superman and they loved Wonder Woman, point them to this book. If there's one thing we need to do as comic fans, there's so much snark on the internet. Let me pull back a little bit, because I don't know. I really don't feel that way as much anymore now. I feel like there's one, because I'm hopeful with the internet now, because I think it's, and I'm not just going to say our Facebook group, but I really do feel that's a great example of what I think is a growing trend on the internet. I think you're seeing a lot of communities of people who are tired of snark, who are getting together and really having positive conversations with a lot of depth about things that they really enjoy. And I think it's a lot of the fan community that is getting together. Comic fans, and I think, fandom for a lot of things in general, take a lot of flack as being negative. But I think there's a lot of people that are previously the quiet majority that really are just excited about things and enjoy them, to varying degrees. It's kind of like if they don't like something, they just walk away from it and focus on the things that they do, which that's great. And I think if you're really loving something right now, the best thing you can do for it is promote it, let people know, point a friend or two to it. If we're all pointing a friend or two to comics that are really good, I'm not saying, you got to say everything's great. I really don't do that. I talk about things. Look, we're spending a really long time talking about Wonder Woman right now because it's a great book. And none of that's forced. We just kind of said, let's talk Wonder Woman because it was cool. You got to do that. Get the word out. And I think honestly, I think if you're listening to this podcast, one of the reasons you're listening is because we're all like-minded. We really enjoy this medium and want it to continue. I think we need to be the ambassadors of comics now for people that aren't reading them and just how great they are. If you take a look at the successful DC franchises right now, what's really successful? Television. Well, look how much delivery that is. Every week, they're getting a brand new episode. These are people who are watching Arrow, people who are watching Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Gotham, and any of the Marvel output as well. I don't want to, because I'm digging all that stuff too, are tailor-made for comics. They really are. Get them reading a single book and try to lock them onto something that they enjoy or, is thematically similar. Break them in. And they don't necessarily need to be the comic fans that we are. I had friends of mine growing up who liked one character, and they just enjoyed that singleton book. So, what we don't have, I think, in comics right now is your casual audience. We don't have a lot of people that just read like 1 or 2 titles, and I think we can be ambassadors to those people. They don't need to be crazy collectors like we are. I think nowadays with the accessibility of digital and trades, and it's really easy to either be a paper or digital fan and, pick up a digital trade, pick up a paper trade, pick up a paper hardcover, pick up singleton issues, whatever. It's real easy to get that now. And there's an immediacy to it, and there's a lot of fans out there that I think are ready to be made without it being an expensive jump into this medium. Because it really isn't if you are judicious about how you do it. I mean, we're nutty. We want all the stuff. and I won't change that. I would not recommend that as an entry point for people. You really don't have to read all these books. Wonder Woman's completely independent. Just read Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
You don't need to read anything else to enjoy this book. Absolutely nothing else. Speaking of other books, actually, let's talk a little bit, if we could, before we go on, just a little bit about controversies in comics in general, because this week I was reading a little bit about the controversy with the variant covers of Wonder Woman with Frank Cho. And if I'm mispronouncing his last name, I really apologize, because I like the artist a lot. And it was interesting when I was reading it, because I'm going to admit I didn't read everything about it, because what I end up doing is when I start reading something and it starts ruining my enjoyment of something that I'm digging, I just kind of back away. I'm a big fan. When it comes to creators, here's kind of my take on it. I really am interested when I initially hear that, creators have a falling out, because I'm more interested in news of, the news was that he's leaving the book as a variant cover. I think it's after the 6th issue he's done doing variant covers. Well, I like his artwork. So I tend to pick up on those stories to try and see, is there any news about where else he's going? I do read about the controversy. There was some issues between him and Greg Rucka, and I think it was the messages were being delivered to him through the editor about what was going on, Greg Rucka's notes about changes to Wonder Woman. Basically what ends up happening is there's a different ideology as far as how you want to present the character. I don't know, unless I sat down with both sides and really heard their premise, who I'd feel was right or wrong, or if I'd feel just kind of like, listen, guys, best thing for you is just to kind of go your separate ways. This is really just an artistic difference between you. I'm always sad to hear that, though, because I'm digging this book, obviously, from the conversation that we're having. The variant covers are really great. The interior artwork, the original cover is great. I'm loving everything together. You mentioned the team when you were talking earlier about them. And the variant covers are part of the team. I really love that aspect of it. But I'm glad that if the relationship isn't working, that Frank left. And I can't wait to see what Frank Cho's going to do. I'm sorry. And again, apologies for name butchery there. I know on this podcast we do that a lot, but we don't hear how people pronounce their names, so I try to reference that whenever we make those mistakes. But these are creators who mean a lot to me. I tend to really love comic creators, and I want to see new projects when I'm digging their work. And that's kind of where my stance goes on those type of stories. I don't spend a lot of time really delving a lot into reading the controversies, mainly because I like to know from a cursory sense, just because it's an interesting topic. But then I kind of back away and go back to reading the work, because I'm here for the work. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into putting out the work for me to read and enjoy it, and to marvel at the art and things like that. That's always my primary focus. I don't spend a lot of time in the controversy or weighing in on it. Like, I'm not, as you can tell from this one, I'm not really taking sides because I haven't heard all the sides. To the point where I feel like I've got a balance of what's Greg Rucka's side of this, what's the editor's side of this, what Frank Cho's side of this one. I don't know all of those sides of it. It's not really why I'm here. So that's kind of how I handle it. And I thought that was a more interesting discussion topic, is how do you handle controversies when you read? Because sure, I'm interested. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, hey, I'm above that. I read it because I saw the tagline, and like anybody else, I got pulled in. But I do have a limit as far as how long I'll stick around for that kind of stuff. Mainly because I really, my basic premise is I like to know what's going on. I get interested because I like the creator, and I want to see where they land, because I want to follow their work. And that's really my end result, is where are they going to be so I can keep following their work. They need to be somewhere, because these are talented people, and I want to see them end up somewhere. And I'm sorry the relationship didn't work. In the end, it might be better for them and for us as fans for them to get into a better working relationship, so they're delivering the kind of work they're proud of and they're motivated to hit out of the park. So I always think that kind of stuff can wind up being a win-win, as long as everybody involved winds up somewhere cool.
Yeah. But it was funny because this whole thing, I still really haven't read anything. You told me about the controversy a little bit, and I really didn't do much research on it. And part of the reason is when I'm looking and dealing with controversy and other, the behind the scenes activity in the comic book or even television and whatnot, and any of those things where it's when it comes off to me like it's a creative differences or it's between these two part of a show or a comic or whatever. I don't have a direct interaction with either of them. I don't have a direct connection with them. And I kind of I kind of always just lead towards it's not my business. I'm going to back off on this. Now, if I'm sitting there reading a controversy where it looks like someone is being just overtly wronged, or like with the whole Aquaman controversy that was going on where the fans were really attacking, calling him out his writing and everything about that, and we jumped on that one. That was something we were both like, what, this is wrong, because it was people outside attacking, like currently going on with the new Ghostbusters remake. Now, I love the original. I still haven't seen the new one because I wasn't able to get out to see it. But there's just been such hate and venom going towards this remake, to the point where Leslie Jones, who is an amazing, hysterical, wonderful comedian who got this great role, who did it, was being brutally attacked online through Twitter, through her account getting hacked, through different, very nasty stuff they were doing to her just because she's an actor who took a role. Something like that really got me angry. Something like that really just got a rise out of me and made me go, what the hell? People are stupid. And it was one of those things where you get that visceral reaction. When I look at something like this, and I see, I hear about, okay, this creator and this creator. I'm like, I kind of, drift to a point where I'm like, I'm going to stay out of this because I don't know the whole story. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's said, what wasn't said, and to be honest, I think this is one of those things where it's not my business and I'm going to back off. And in a way, I don't know if it's the right way or the wrong way, or it's just kind of how I am with a lot of different stuff. And especially, when it gets to this creative media, because I have absolutely zero idea how to truly create a comic or how to go about writing. I can come up with an idea for a story and I could draw a stick figure maybe for artwork and for a layout, but the true creative process on what it actually takes to create a book from point A, from beginning to end, I don't know that. I can't do that. It's one of those things that my brain can't wrap around. And because of that, I stay out of the creative process. I stay out of judgment, and I stay out of what is going on between these two. If I could ever sit down and have a long conversation with them, learn about the facts, maybe then I could give an opinion. But right now, I'm like, all we have is a hearsay, and I think it's that's something we got to watch and we got to kind of stay away from.
Your Ghostbusters analogy is really a strong one, because I do the same thing with film. When I'm interested in seeing a movie, like I love the talent in the new Ghostbusters. I haven't seen it yet. It's a movie I want to see. It's on my radar. We were supposed to go to the drive-in over the weekend, and it just didn't work out. My buddy came back from Georgia that day, and it was a long drive from Georgia to Ohio, and it was before he was going back to California. We were going to go to the drive-in, and they had The Secret Life of Pets, which I really want to see, and they had Ghostbusters as a double feature. I was like, a lot of times we go to the drive-in now because I have to work the next day. I won't do the double feature just because, you're already going there in the evening, so I'll go see the first movie and go home. This was one where I was staying for both because I wanted to see the new Ghostbusters movie. But the controversy with film is the same thing. When it's something I'm interested in, I'll read it to be conversationally up on it because, I get interested and intrigued just like everybody else about those topics. So, again, I don't want to say I'm above that because that's kind of silly and not true. But I get to a point where I realize the controversy is overtaking my interest in seeing the film or my open-mindedness about the film, and that's when I back off. And I do the same thing with comics. When the controversy becomes more of what's going on conversation-wise than the actual product itself. Like, these comics are artwork. I mean, and when I say artwork, I mean from the story, the whole creative team, cover to cover. I don't know. I want to talk about that more than I want to talk about the fact that there's a fight between Greg Rucka and Frank Cho. I mean, it's just not. I am interested in knowing that because I want to see what who the next variant cover artist is going to be, where Frank Cho's going to go. Sure, I'd like to see the resolution of it. I'd like to see Greg Rucka's side because I haven't read that yet. To be honest, I don't know what that looks like. To your point, is it our business? Well, it's our. Frank Cho released this, I don't know, there was an interview that he did, and this has been, put out publicly. So that kind of becomes our business once it's put out there publicly. As far as the Greg Rucka side of it, Greg Rucka can choose not to answer. Maybe he's already answered, I just haven't seen it. Once they do that, then it's public. So then it becomes kind of our business because they've made it out there. So I'll be interested in seeing the other side of it. I won't lie. I'm interested in seeing that too. Not in the place of enjoying the book, though. I don't need to love everybody's opinion involved in the creation of artwork to enjoy the artwork, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It stands alone. You enjoy what you enjoy. It's not, you don't enjoy it because so-and-so is this really cool person. You enjoy what you're actually seeing. It's, kind of one of the things where we look and we talk about what we like. We talk about what we're excited about. And it's because we're getting this. It's not about because, Greg Rucka wrote it. It's because it's a great story. And it's not the artwork. We're not, backing Cho because of he's a great guy. We're saying he's a good artist because look at what he did. This is some cool stuff. So it's it's one of those things where I think both of us look at it's and like with actually with music, there's a lot of musicians that I enjoy that really aren't nice people, and they've done some they've made some horrible choices in their life, but you still look and you say, man, but they're a brilliant musician. Yeah. They've got talent, man. You can't take that from them, even though I wouldn't invite them over for Sunday dinner because I don't think they're a nice person. But musically, it's something that is something that just reaches and affects you.
Yeah, and I thought it was just an interesting topic just because that's gone on right now. It's kind of, I think for people who listen to this podcast, I like to let them into our heads. And, we both kind of, it's funny, I think we answer things sometimes, even though you and I are similarly minded on this, I think our approach is a little different. Our analogies are a little different. Our reasoning is slightly different. We're we're similar, I think, in this particular topic. But I think it's important for our listeners to I like hanging out with all of you. I mean, that's really one of the reasons. Why do we podcast? I mean, Jim and I could do this over the phone or, over dinner. I mean, as far as this kind of chat, this is different because I really do feel like we're hanging out with our listener audience. We've been doing this for 471 episodes. And really, if we're not hanging out with you, what are we bothering? And it's fun to kind of have these offshoot topics every so often because it's relevant to what we're talking about now. And I think we're all a little different on that because there's somebody banging their head and going, guys, this is the most interesting topic of the week. I've been diving into it. I don't think you're wrong for that. I think we're all just a little different in how we approach this medium. And I think it's fun to kind of know where we connect and where we don't. I think that's interesting, too. We don't all have to agree. But it's fun to share how we approach things and why. Speaking of new books, I want to talk about Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps Rebirth. And it's funny, it's the first issue it's the Rebirth issue, the kickoff of Hal Jordan. I'm just realizing now, we've had a decent amount of Rebirth at this point. It's the first time we're seeing Hal. I mean, really seeing Hal. And, he's a main character in DC. And talk about a guy who, Rebirth-wise, you want to see. He really is the kickoff of this concept with the original Rebirth miniseries. So I was really excited to see what was going on with Hal. Talk about another issue with contrasting viewpoints. In this case, you're taking a look at Hal's main nemesis, Sinestro, and Hal Jordan. We've got Robert Venditti writing this one. Both Sinestro and Hal are in a transitional phase of their life and trying to escape their fate and move on to the next level, the next phase where they go, set their direction. Their paths seem to be divergent, but then they converge in the most interesting way. And it feels very different. It's appropriate to talk about this after talking about Diana and Steve Trevor, but it's very different because these are two enemies who were former friends. And I really like the way this not only lays out what's going on with Hal and Sinestro, but kind of just gives kind of an overview of the current status quo of the Green Lantern universe in general. A really well done first issue that just got me excited for the whole premise. And we saw some things we've never seen before that were super cool.
Oh, God, yeah. I tell you, this was, again, another one of those. I'm glad you compared it to Wonder Woman with the going back and forth and the balance between the two stories, because if this was just a Hal Jordan story, it'd be cool. If this was just a Sinestro story, it'd be cool, but you put the two of them together. You show how they are still interconnected, even after all these years, everything they're doing, that takes it to something beyond cool. That takes it to kind of an epic level of storytelling that you're getting. And that's what you get when you're doing really great Green Lantern Corps versus Sinestro Corps stories. And for me, I got to say also, art team, wonderful stories, but this was another book where the art team did just some amazing parts to add to the story. Ethan Van Sciver, artist, Jason Wright, colorist, and letterer Dave Sharp. Again, I'm throwing out the full creative team just because this was something that you get this great story that's being told, but then these visual elements, and especially on the colors. I love Ethan Van Sciver's, pencils and inking. His artwork is amazing, but I tell you, Jason Wright's a name that I always notice, and I always say, yes, he's going to be on it. And I especially love him on the green books because, it's easy to say, yeah, you're going to have heavy green saturation, but there's different ways you do the green within, especially this translucent Hal Jordan that we get in the beginning, where that for me is a really cool color usage where you got that heavy green focus, you got the blue, kind of the darker blue and the ice surrounding him. You've got some really just colors that make it pop, and it's green on green on green, but it's all the slight variations on the shading and the tinting and just that really coolness that I always love in a well done Green Lantern book. And the green books are something that have to pop on me in color, and this issue definitely has that really cool pop.
It's funny when you take a look at this book, what these energies have become, like the green energy of will, the yellow energy of fear, go on and on and on, the red fear of anger, of hate and that type of thing as you go through. You take a look at those energies that are there, or the red energy of rage. What am I talking about? These are emotionally powerful energies that are given off. They have an effect on the universe. They are changing the universe. It's a whole spectrum of energy. You see that they've tapped into these energies that people really aren't meant to be tapping into, but they found a way to harness them. And there's something scientific about it. There's something magical about it. There's all kinds of ways you can look at this in its exploration over the years. I liked this issue a lot, and Jim and I had to re-record this because due to a power outage, my file got corrupted, and we'd only talked about a couple of the books so far, and we were going to release a shorter episode to you. And this conversation's benefiting from redoing it, because this is something we didn't discuss. The effect of this power on these two people. In Hal's case, he's dissipating the energy because of the fact that he's been using that gauntlet, which predates the rings. It's very, very powerful, but also doesn't have the same level of control that the ring does. And it's having a negative effect on Hal right now. Sinestro, in his case, controlling Parallax, all of his efforts has worn him down. Look, he's aging. He's, trying to find out what the next level is for him to make a comeback, to accomplish his goals, because he seems to have done everything. He thinks the Corps' gone and he's won, and he's going on. What is next for me? Is there anything next for me? Because I feel worn down and weary. And at the same time, while this is happening, Hal is trying to find the way out of his trap, where he keeps going down this way. He's gone. He becomes an energy being, vanishes altogether. Who knows what's going to happen to him? I really love this dire sense from the two of them of my status quo is really coming to an end unless I do something now.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. And it's funny because, as you said, stuff we didn't think about and stuff we didn't talk about the last time, when you're looking at just the comparisons between the two of them, with Hal being kind of in the way the person who kind of breathes that spark back into Sinestro. At the beginning of the issue, he's ready, he's done. He's like, okay. He moved Warworld to the spot where, Oa was. He used Warworld's weaponry to finish off the very last remnants of the planet. Something that I didn't completely notice he did. The opening sequence, you see a lot of boom, 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 boom. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But it didn't really click on me what exactly Sinestro is doing. He's completely decimating all remnants that was Oa, and he's putting his world in its place. He's done. He's actually ready, and he's come to a point where he's like, I'm done. And he even has the one lines where he will be entombed alongside the bones of the Green Lantern Corps. He's ready to be done. He's ready to be finished. And throughout this process, throughout Hal's rebirth, you see that spark come back on Sinestro. He's got that one more fight left in him. He's got that one more purpose and mission ahead of him that he has to do, because he feels the willpower coming back. He feels the core coming back. Okay, it's time to throw down one more time. And I love just how you get that kind of that rebirth in Sinestro. You get the rebirth in Hal. You get the rebirth in the core. It's a complete and total rebirth of this universe, and I loved seeing that. And it was something that you see the first time, and even like first, second time, but you don't really get a strong understanding and connection of what you're getting. And that's one of the reasons that we always do rereads, and I like to go back through and reread stuff after you and I even have a conversation about it, just because you'll see a little bit more. And this is a book that on the surface, it has a great story, but when you start delving more into it, you start looking at it, it becomes something epic. I am absolutely more excited for the Green Lantern stories now than I was when they first started announcing Rebirth, because I was excited. I'm like, yeah, that should be kind of cool. Hal Jordan, Green Lantern Corps, cool. I like the Green Lantern Corps stories. Hal's a good guy. It'd be kind of neat to see how they get back. But now you kind of, in my head, I'm picturing we're going to get something epic from the Green books, and I went back and I reread, the Green Lanterns, and seeing just them deal with the Red Lanterns. And you're seeing all this, they're laying down the groundwork for something, monumental in the Green Lantern stories again. And that, for me, has me have this excitement once again for the Green books.
I really liked the sequence with Hal where he was connecting his dad as a test pilot to Abin Sur. The crash, his last act, really connecting to his father and looking at Abin Sur almost as I don't know if a father figure is the right thing, but just connecting him with that same sense of loss that he had with his father and connecting this, because he doesn't really know Abin Sur. I mean, let's be honest. He didn't really know this guy, yet there's this fondness that we often see from him. And I know some of that is learning about him through the Corps and the Corps' relationship with him. You can't help but have respect for the guy when you see how much they respected him. But forgetting all that, when you take a look at this very early on, his connection with Dad, and this is similar to what happened here. This is a guy who had a family, and he crash landed, and he died, and that was what happened with my dad. And he's asking me to carry on his legacy. How can I not make connections with that? I really liked that, because I've never seen that done before. It may be, and there's people banging their head against the thing going, Sean, it's a huge part of the mythos, him connecting it to his dad. I don't remember that, and I'd love to know if it was somewhere else, because I think it's cool. But for here, it really stuck out for me. And there's a lot of times where you'll read a story and maybe it's there and it wasn't your focus when you're reading it. In this case, for me, that really stood out. It's funny, it's two little panels, but it just added this connection between two characters that I didn't see before. And I really quite liked it. It just kind of added just another sense of why Hal became who he is.
Yeah, and it's funny because with me, I always associate the Green Lantern Corps with police force and with military, because they haven't laid out like that. And you start looking at the different characters and the different personalities, and especially with Hal going from a military family, and everything that Hal did before becoming the Corps, you see that connection. But again, like you, I never really put the comparison of the death and final sacrifices of Abin Sur and Hal's dad, and especially even the passing on. Hal's dad's jacket gets passed on to Hal, and you see Hal always wearing that as an adult, and Abin Sur's ring gets passed on to Hal. These are connections I never made before, really before this issue, and it's again. Like you, I'm like, it's probably out there and people have probably talked about it before, but it was something that never really clicked, in my head. You always see Hal wearing his dad's jacket, so that, and there's been a lot of cool, stories that have been told with around the jacket, and with him, remembering, and it was kind of like a connection to humanity. And I know I've read a couple stories where about that, where they pull that into like the mythos, but it was never really laid out for me for whatever reason, or I never noticed it until this recent story.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about this is it kind of recapped where Hal's status quo has been. And I've really liked this last run of Hal's. I liked Robert Venditti writing him. I like this idea that Hal took this hit. He took one for the team. He's like, listen, the Green Lantern Corps, I was their leader. There were decisions that were made along the way, and ultimately it falls upon me to make sure, we were smeared. There was a smear campaign by the Durlans, where they, basically did a great job of making them look horrible to the universe. So I ran off looking like the one that was the villain. It was all me. The Corps, turned on me. I'm the fugitive that's been hunted down. Left my ring behind, took this gauntlet, and left for the purpose of doing that. But then everyone vanishes. Imagine doing all that, and then, what was it all for? Because they're gone anyway. So you would renew your quest to say, well, now my job is to go find them and to bring them back and to rebuild. I really love that premise where there's this guy who's did this amazing act, and then because that's really a bold leadership move to take that step, to take one for the team like that, and then to find out that it was all for naught. And not really, because you bring everyone back and you've taken that hit. There's going to have to be some reckoning as far as how do we resolve Hal's role. Yeah. But I really loved that recap and kind of putting it in place. I think Venditti really just gets. I love his work on Exo Man of War. I think the work here. So if I'm butchering the last name, I want to apologize right away because I'm a big fan of the work. And I just think what he's doing with Green Lantern is so interesting and unique too. This whole bit where it turns into him creating the ring was the part I've never seen that done. I've seen the rings forged before in the Green Lantern books. I get that, and I'm talking about various color spectrum too. Where they're kind of experimenting with things. Cool, I get that. Hal doing it for this reason was compelling to me. It's like he's in desperation. It's like what's happening to me right now can't happen because they need me. So it's his will to carry on, his will to go back and pull the Corps back, to bring the team back, that sends him into this frenzy. What does it mean, this ring he's crafting, though? Because everyone around him, who's connected with him, from the Lost Guardians to Kyle Rayner, this is so not good. Jessica Cruz is grabbing her head and screaming. Sinestro feels this one. All the way through, they all, are feeling this one. I loved that Carol knew it was Hal.
Yeah.
Not just Sinestro. Carol knew it was Hal. You talked earlier about how you want to see Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor get back together. I want that deep of a connection that Carol was able to pull that out. I can't wait to see what this means for those two in light of everything that's happened with her. And I don't know, I'm very, very interested in the Green Lantern universe. This did a great job of You can't do a total recap and make that the only thing that you do. If you don't have a moment like this where you're like, oh, that is cool. Then when he puts the ring back on, one of the most stunning moments, I think, in a while. I love when the Green Lantern Corps has these power moments. And I know from our last conversation, there's a sequence in particular that you really dug.
Oh, God. Well, there was multiple sequences I really dug, starting back when the forging sequences, when he first started making the ring. I loved how, as he's striking, that's when he's going from translucent to solid. And they kept going back and forth. Every time he hit, you see the solid form of Hal Jordan coming back. And it's that, and even throughout this, his inner dialogue about how he's got to keep reminding himself who he is. He's got to hold on. And it's that gut check of the willpower that he's forging himself to come back. Because if he doesn't, he will forget. And that was something that was great in the end of the story, leading into here, going forward. And it's that, you know, those moments. But the ending had that wonderful, wonderful 1-2 punch where when Hal's first putting on the ring, he's doing the oath. He says, you know, beware my power, Green Lantern's light. And you're like, yeah! You get that moment where he's sitting there in full uniform. And then he continues on. You flip the page and you got that other one where my name is Hal Jordan. It's about time I cause some trouble. And he's got that smirk. He's got that Hal Jordan smirk. You get a wonderful 1-2 of hoorah moments where I was just like, dang, this is awesome.
I gotta stop you there.
Sequences.
I gotta stop you there, though, because you're underselling that sequence.
Oh, okay.
Because he doesn't just say that. My name is Hal Jordan. I was the Green Lantern of Space Sector 2814. I'm going to find out what happened to my friends and protect the universe while I do it. I've got lots of work to do. The good will see the Green Lantern symbol and know there's still someone with the will to fight for them. The bad will see it and run. My name is Hal Jordan. It's about time I cause some trouble. Yeah. And that gorgeous sequence of art where you see him there with that ring blazing, and you see the lantern, and just the look on his face, it was like, ugh. And I'm sorry, I had to cut you out just only because that sequence, it's the whole dialogue build to that was just kind of like, yes! What a great ending.
Amen, amen. I agree completely with you. That was... And again, the wonderful thing I love is how you have these two, but you know, it's something again that I noticed the first time when he does the oath, he's got that power, that rage, he's got that fury of the Green Lantern Corps, willpower standing strong. When you see the second, I love he's got that little smirk. He's got that Hal Jordan smirk that, you know, it's time to strut. I love how it's about time I cause some trouble. Again, little things like that. Hal, you know, John Stewart's always been my Lantern. John's always been the guy. I always connect with him. I always thought, man, John Stewart's awesome. I loved him as a Lantern. I love how when you get the right writer working him, you know, they really know how to do it. But I got to tell you, these last couple pages had me as a Hal guy. These last couple pages had me going, hoorah, Jordan. I am so pumped. Again, the Green Universe has just this possibility to be epic, you know, and for me, epic Green Lantern story is always Jeff Johns' run, just because it's Jeff Johns. Right here, this has that same fire, that same energy for me. I am so excited for the Green books now that I'm like, next, please, come on, let's keep going. Let's keep this build. Let's keep the train rolling here.
Speaking of keeping the train rolling, can we talk about New Superman #1?
Oh, God, yeah.
Because I really want to talk about this book. I'm very interested in it. What I love about this book, it takes place in Shanghai, China, right? I was like, okay, they're doing a new Superman. I guess it's interesting. I got to tell you, in one issue, they sold me on this. It's super cool. What I like about this one is, at first, I'm like, oh, it's going to be the kid that was bullied. And then I was reading it, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, wait, it's the bully that's going to be new Superman. And that's not the whole story, though. He's picking on this kid whose father owns the airlines. And you feel bad for the kid that's being bullied. You do, because, I mean, I had some bullying issues where I was bullied when I was younger and all that stuff, so I kind of, you know, sympathize with that a lot. But I like that when you see the kid who is the bully, our character we're following, it's not the whole story with him. His mother was on a plane for that airline and is looking at, you know, this is negligence from that airline. His only outlet, because when that happens, there's nothing you can do. It's out of your control. So you try to control part of the world that you can't control. So how is he trying to do that? By bullying this kid, because it's his only way, his only outlet. I'm not saying it's right. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating. I'm not saying he's a good guy for doing it. My point is, though, I get it. I get, like, you can be sympathetic even though you want to, like, take him aside and say, listen, buddy, you're wrong. Yeah. It's, like, pure and simple. I love that about this character because he immediately feels human to me. When you're introducing a new character, you got to make him compelling. You got to make them interesting, and you got to do some twists and turns that you aren't really expecting. Having it be the bully, I thought was an interesting choice because it's a little bit of a twist. Taking you through the issue and making the kid, at the beginning, I'm like, I don't even know if I like him. Then you get partway through and you're like, oh, wait, I kind of really like him. Because you see that there's some vulnerability to him and what's motivating him. Even though he's wrong, I like him. I like that he's human. I want to talk to him. I want to help him. I like that he feels, to a certain extent, guilty about what he was doing, but yet not 100%. And I want to see this kid continue to evolve because he's a kid. And I really like that he feels young and he's making young mistakes. I want to see him grow into something more. I want to see what this kid is going to become. I like his relationship with his dad is very strained. I'm interested to see where that goes. Because, I think we all go through stages in our life where our relationship with our parents kind of, roller coaster to varying degrees. Sometimes they're a little bit, sometimes they're big drop. I think when you have a family like this where this kind of issue happened, you can see that straining a relationship where Dad's kind of at this point at the end. I think the dad really does care about his son, but he's at the end of his rope with what's happened with him and all the things that he's pulled along the way, especially with the constant phone calls about the bullying. It's like, kind of leave this kid from the airlines alone. So, or his dad, owns the airlines alone. I don't want to get sued because this is a guy who, quite frankly, can drain your money. He can bury you by the amount of lawsuits he can tie you up in. So it was really interesting to see this story unfold, and it felt very grounded in reality to me, and I like that. I really like that with a new character, not doing this with an old character where you're like, it just doesn't feel right because I know this character's backstory. This one I don't know, and I'm interested in him.
Oh, big time! And it's funny because on paper, if you had told me, if I hadn't read it and actually, seen and see how everything laid out, I probably wouldn't have been as excited for this just because of, he's a bit of a jerk and this and that, and he gets powers. I'm like, I don't know. Because for me, it's always about with Superman, when you have the mantle of Superman, it's all about that decent, honest, good person who rises up, who uses his powers for good and not evil. And like with when Connor was first Superboy, he was a bit of a punk, but he slowly started becoming that hero. And I loved seeing that birth of him as becoming an actual hero, where he actually really truly embraced being Superboy, and he truly embraced what the S meant and all that kind of the journey that he went on. I was like, man, that was awesome. Well, with this kid, we're jumping right in, and you're already seeing the signs that there is that hero in it. There is that person behind him. There is that person who could one day turn into a Superman, who could have that, sacrifice above all things and help the innocent and all the noble stuff. But along the route, he's got to learn his path. He's got to learn his journey. And then I loved in his first interview he kept slipping, and he kept calling the kid, Leo, Fat Boy. And he's like, well, Fat Boy, I mean Leo. And he kept slipping every so often. He would call him Fat Boy. And he's trying to be all, hey, yeah, I'm a good guy. And then, and he slips like that. And I love the fact that after he saved the kid's life, he then pretty much mugs him. He's like, well, give me all your money. And it was just stuff like that just cracked me up, where this kid he's got these positive qualities, but he's also got this dark side to him. And I want to see it's kind of like my love for Damian, where Damian is this little monster who has the code of honor, who's learning to be the Bat, who's learning, and you're seeing that growth. I'm seeing that same type of style in this kid. It's kind of like when you look at the difference between him and between Jonathan White or Jonathan Kent, whatever, Clark's son you want to call him. You look at the two dramatic differences between these people, but it's also based on how they're raised. The Kents raised, John to be this good, decent kid, and he's, you're seeing that he is going to be the son of Superman. This kid, he doesn't have as positive of life going on. He's had tragedy early on. His father is very distant from him. So he's going to kind of react and reach out in different ways. A lot of times you get, and you know this because, you're a teacher, you deal with bully situations. You've dealt with these kids who come from troubled homes, who act out, who don't really know the correct way to be or know what they need to do. So we're seeing that in this kid. And within one issue, I had a pretty good solid groove of who he is. I saw where this future could go for him, but you also see a lot of the pitfalls he's going to deal with. You see just the introduction of this government entity that doesn't exist that actually exists. The conspiracy theory group kind of out there that's making him Superboy or Superman, and there's going to be darkness coming from there. There's going to be something that's not going to go exactly the way you think it is. And I love how there's just from opening issue right out the gate, we already have some really cool built-in confidants. We have some cool built-in possible villains. We've got this just this universe to explore with this kid.
I first started liking him in that Blue Condor sequence. So, Blue Condor is, it says right here, Blue Condor is one of Shanghai's and China's first American-style supervillains. Every few months, he shows up to terrorize the rich and powerful, people like Lixin's family. He's a lot bigger in real life than on TV, so he's captured the one he calls quote-unquote fat boy, and he's got this moment where he's like, what is his motivation to stay here? He whispers to himself, run, but I don't. So instead, I do the stupid thing. So stupid. I'm not even in Blue Condor's target demographic. My dad's a mechanic. He throws a can at Blue Condor's head, so the kid gets free, and he tells him to run. And he's like, I say it again. I'm not even sure if it's to Fat Boy or to myself, but Fat Boy's the one who runs. So I guess I'm the somebody who's aching to die. I just loved the sequence. And in today's fashion, somebody would be sitting there, and they would be filming this whole thing. And I really loved how that played out. Felt very current, felt very today, but it also turns the tide where you're like, oh, he's got some good in him. And that's when you're in a situation like that, where you're going to choose either A or B. And it's gut check time. It's going to be instinct that drives that. You can't even explain why you did it. You just do it. That means at your core, you're good. There's good there. Circumstances has changed that, but at your core, you're good. I loved that because it made me like this kid, made me intrigued by him. I'm like, oh, he's not all that he seems on the surface. This is not a surface level character, and the development of this character is really interesting.
Yeah, I know. And one of the neat sequences I loved was when the graveyard sequence.
Oh, yeah.
When he's visiting his mother's grave, and this government entity not only knew everything about him from just a moment, he flashed a moment on the screen. They know everything about him. They knew because of cell phone GPS service, you haven't visited her grave in nearly 2 years. I love the fact that not only we've got this massively powerful entity that can, pull up in a heartbeat all you know about it. They're able to pull that kind of stuff. And I love that, again, especially because this is this giant conspiracy group that doesn't exist according to everybody. But his dad is one of those conspiracy guys who believes it, and they're trying to expose it, and et cetera, like that. I love just this immediate connection already between the multiple sides and the multiple fashions that are going to be in this story. Right from the gate, we're learning this. This was, when you put an S on somebody's chest, especially when you say they're not related to Kent's, they're not Kryptonian, this is going to be a huge and tough story to sell. Right out the gate, we're getting those kind of stories because they could have called him Mega Man or Power Man or whatever kind of name you want to give him. They chose to say Superman. They chose to make him the Chinese version of the Chinese form of Superman. And because of that, they've got to have this. They've got to stay, he's got to hold up to the judgment. He's got to hold up to the critique. Right out the gate, this kid's holding up to it. I'm very excited because of that, because I see this potential to be a Superman. Yeah,
and that part was cool. I liked when the powers were triggered. They were triggered in a dream sequence involving saving his mom. And it led to this huge emotional reaction. And when he comes up with the powers, it's like, why would I stop doing this? I'm Superman. Like, and so they try to wrangle him in by bringing in the Batman and Wonder Woman of China, and that's where they leave us hanging. And I love their costumes. I can't wait to see them. I want to know their backstories. They really did a great job. In a first issue, it's really your point to say, listen, we're taking this to series. We want you to read it. This is a way to leave you hanging to do that, because they really did this for this one. I hope people give this one a shot, because it's the creative team really did a good job at the beginning of making me believe this is unique enough that it stands on its own.
Yeah. Okay, and it's funny because the connections, the similarities, like how he's got the reporter who is, who does the story, who's obviously it looks like he's gonna be his version of Lois Lane. You've got the powerful entity, his version of Lex Luthor maybe, but even little stuff like how when Batman and Wonder Woman were called in, they used the Signal Watch. Because it was a wrist command, kind of like, and I was like, oh, the Signal Watch, cool. It was just little stuff like that. And then you talk about costume. We talked about costumes a couple times, and I'm glad the way he looks, that they didn't just try to do a knockoff version of the Superman costume. He's got a personalized suit that fits for him. It's still got the big S on it, but it's not the big red S with the shield. It's, a different style. And then you go into Batman and Wonder Woman. They've got the similarities, but it's not the exact same thing. It's modified and personalized. So these are, again, this is going to be something I'm very excited about, and I want to see where this goes.
Can we talk Nightwing Rebirth #1?
Oh, God, yes.
Because this is a book I really want to talk about with this character. Because what you've done here is you've taken Nightwing and transitioned him back from being Dick Grayson's super spy into being Nightwing again. And really getting to the core of who he is as a character, why he would jump back to that, how he missed elements of Dick Grayson being a way to kind of hide away from his superhero life, and having that duality. It's when you live a life of duality where you're able to live two separate different lives, and then to have that taken away, really having both of those lives taken away. What a huge loss. He invented a whole new life and was given the gift of an opportunity to do it again. Here you go. We're going to give it all back to you. You can take it all back. And I really loved that was the premise of this story. I like that we got to see, the beginning introduction of what was going on with the Huntress, Helena Bertinelli going on and adopting the role. I like how they laid it out. This is the same Helena Bertinelli that was pre-New 52. She's now out there. She's doing what she did there. This is leading into Birds of Prey. What a great lead into that, because I'm super stoked this character's back in the DC. I'm a huge Huntress fan, both versions. So having that character released into the DC universe is really gangbusters for me. As an introductory issue to that, really cool. Dick Grayson is one of my favorite characters of all time, though. This really nailed it out of the park. This is another book that I was waiting on. Another book I'm like, oh my gosh, we're finally getting Nightwing. Because I was excited to see Tom King and his Batman. That's one of the great things about the way they're releasing this Rebirth. It's staggered. So you're getting a couple issues of a bunch of different titles. Now we're introducing another few titles into the mix. This is one that I was really eagerly anticipating. I'm glad we're getting a heavy hitter. Or a couple of heavy hitters in the case of Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns Rebirth, Nightwing Rebirth, along with some of your new ones like New Superman. Because, the people that I'm really intrigued to see, I'm getting and being delivered so well. I don't know how they got the creators lined up for these books. Obviously, Tom King and Tim Seeley, doing Bat-related books, kind of a no-brainer because of what they were doing so well before. Yay. But some of the other people that, Greg Rucka back on Wonder Woman, some of the other people they have associated with them, though, I don't know how they lined up the pitches or how they got them right. Everyone seems to be paired up with the right books. I mean, because the characters are really well represented. They get to the core of what I like without throwing away what I've been reading. And this is a great example of that. Nightwing was fantastic since the New 52 kicked off. When Grayson kicked off, again, more fantastic. A new status quo, a new change in modus operandi. I was already digging the character. Yes, you've got me with more of what I'm digging about this character. Now you're bringing him back as Nightwing, and this issue kicks off again. These are people, this creative team just really gets Dick Grayson as a character, and that part I'm really liking. I love that he's on the Titans book, too.
The funny thing about this issue for me, if you had told me how many different stories they would have wrapped up, laid down the groundwork, and got set up for this ongoing Rebirth universe, I would have said it's going to probably sound rushed, man. I don't know. And I would have been hesitant of it. But the way this creative team, the way that it was written, the way it looks, the way they went from the different stories, boom, 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 this piece here, this piece here, this piece here, and the way they moved it, I didn't feel like any of these stories were rushed. And you think about it, they have set up, Helena for Birds of Prey. They've set up Rebirth of Nightwing. They took care of the bomb inside of Damian's head. They lined up why, where Dick, why Dick Grayson can't, again, why he can move. They all the different stories they wrapped up and they finished, his complete departure for Spiral, his dealing with the Court of Owls, him setting up how he's going to have to deal with the Court of Owls, why he's going to have to deal with the Court of Owls, Batman's involvement, and he and Batman's interaction and involvement and connection. They did so many different story elements that they set up, wrapped up, and got lined up for the next thing, all in a single issue. This is something that truly amazed me about this story, because how much content we got in this one page, and at no point in time did I ever feel like any of these stories were wrapped up quickly or where I was shortchanged. I think that for me is a great balance because the Grayson stories I was getting before, I absolutely loved. This feeding through, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm cool with this guy. I'm cool with this creative team. I'm cool with where this is going, because they just told me an amazing story and lined up a bunch of neat stuff that have me very excited. So this is something that I was like truly amazed with in this Nightwing story, and how much this really got me online, pulled everything together, and got us ready. Let's continue now. Let's hit the ground running.
Well, the Court of Owls piece I really, really loved, because the court right now is basically, we've got Nightwing, we've got control of Nightwing, things like that. Well, Lincoln March is at least like that, until they drop their masks, put on these darker masks, and then the Talon comes through and he's like, and what we need is a nice clean path to Nightwing. So it basically shows Dick Grayson thinks he's got this under control. The Court of Owls are adding a little twist into the thing. They have other plans. And I like that twist. The Court of Owls, to me, have been one of the most interesting inventions that have come out of the Zack Snyder run. They've put another villain on the playing field that has been interesting. As is the case of a lot of villains, you want to make sure to use them in a way that best benefits what was originally cool about them. This, I thought, was a nice twist that made them relevant again and interesting again. So I'm watching this and going, oh, cool. I want to see where this goes. And it gives a reason for Nightwing to be operating again as Nightwing. He's playing double agent, but who's swerving who? And I can't wait to see where this goes. What a great setup. I love that this is a payoff of something that I've been like, wow, they really haven't paid this off yet. And I'm excited to see where it goes. And it's a whole premise for a series kicking off that I think is really great. The geek out moments for me were the Dick Grayson, Bruce Wayne sequences. When they're talking about, their, relationship, and you see Dick Grayson looking at his costume in the case, that part was just incredibly awesome. Helping my friends, helping anyone who needs me, beating the bad guys, that's who I am. You helped make me into. And I love that costume. That version of the costume, that new one, is really grown on me. The Dick Grayson, Robin costume, the newer version of it. But man, seeing him back in the old Nightwing suit with a new twist. I love the hand gauntlets. I think that part's a neat little twist. I don't know, just really, I'm geeky excited for this. Really geeky excited for this, because he's a character that has been blessed with some really good talent doing his solo work, and I'm really glad to see that they've continued that. trend.
Oh God, yeah. And again, it's one of the things that for me, again, wonderful writing of Damian. The Damian and Dick Grayson sequences, I always love when those two interact, just because they've got that great chemistry. And when you get somebody who gets it, when they're playing the games, I even loved how Damian was called Dick on it, like, well, you're one of those who likes to talk about their feelings, and you can just hear just the okay, what do you want now? Kind of tone in his voice, and then go from that sequence with then just how Damian was outraged that everybody knew about the bomb in his head but him, and he was mad about it. I love, again, little funny moments that lead to something, and then this powerful moment between Dick and Bruce just having this conversation. And I love the fact that Bruce is trying to say, hey, you sure you want to do this? You've helped plenty of people, man. You haven't had a chance to enjoy being Dick Grayson. Again, it was those kind of cool sequences where Bruce is really being this great guy and great friend and teammate and partner, not just the looming scary bat who's ordering him around. I love this evolution that we're seeing in Batman, and we're seeing this throughout all the Bat titles. And I think that's this is the team Batman is the Batman I absolutely love. And I love the fact that he looks at Dick Grayson as an equal, as a partner, not as the person he trained or as somebody he sees him as a fellow hero. And I love those sequences.
Can we talk Justice League Rebirth #1?
Sure.
This is exactly what I was looking for out of this book. I want to know how Superman gets on the team. I was like, what is my looming question? First of all, I want Superman on the team. How does he get on the team? What leads to that whole process? I like the way that they've been introducing the relationship of him with Batman and Wonder Woman, and the fact that they're trying to figure out, can we trust this guy? Can we not? Let's keep him close just to see. This doesn't make a whole lot. I honestly would think it'd be weird if they didn't address that elephant in the room. I'm glad they are. I also like that they're dressing, though, that this is Superman. I mean, this is the da-da-da guy that you always referred to. This is the guy pre-New 52. So he was brought here a totally different way. Now, we got this overarching mystery with him as far as how does that even work, considering how the universe shifted? I love that, because it is him. It's his history and everything like that. His relationship with Lois, how Lois is talking him through and really encouraging him, where he's kind of like, I would be unsure too. Imagine your clone, your twin, your doppelganger, whatever you want to call this, your multiverse equivalent, dies. And you're on that planet, and how do you take that person's place? Should you take that person's place? What is your role in all that? I loved how this part played out because of all that. That part was incredibly interesting to me. And seeing Lois as his confidant, you and I are big fans of the super marriage, and I think really the writers who have touched on it in Rebirth and since the Lois and Clark book kicked off have really done a great job of proving the fact that the super marriage doesn't make him irrelevant. It makes him more relevant. Man, is this cool. Him, the kid, the mom, Lois Lane, their reactions, the reasons why he's joining Justice, or helping out the Justice League, and which is eventually leading to him being a part of the team, just knocked it out of the park. That was the big focal point. I love that there was an alien that made sense for him to get involved. The League's fighting somebody that they're having a lot of trouble with. They got 2 Green Lanterns, the whole entire team. They're having trouble with this being. He needs to show up there. His showing up there, he immediately takes an active role in taking charge and helping out on the team. They start to defer to him. And I love that part of him, because this guy's part of the Trinity. And in the pre-New 52 universe, he'd been on the Justice League for a long time, been a part of team dynamics, understands how to use that team to the advantage of winning. I loved that, and it worked with a Batman who was the master strategist of that team with a rich, long history. He immediately gels with this environment and working there. It felt familiar, yet new, because of what we know about this universe. Really, really great introduction to this whole thing. And Superman, to me, was my focal point.
Oh, big time. And I tell you right here, you're seeing Superman come in and not be a reluctant leader. You're seeing him take command and take charge, and he was large and in charge. It was awesome.
And it is due to, I think, his experience.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that piece is, it's funny, we're talking about our age-old argument about this, but forget about that part. Really, let's take the joke out of it, because what I like about this one is what I'm sure you're liking about it too. This is a guy who's coming in who has experience, and a lot more than the guy who he's replacing.
Was before him, right.
And I like that that's being showcased here.
And I like the fact that, as you talked about with Lois and him having the conversation where he's like, hey, this is the Justice League, but it's the Justice League without Superman. They need you. And I love how, she was kept, and again, the best marriages are where they're equal partners in it. And you see, again, we talked earlier about, how could, this man with godlike powers be in love with this mere mortal? Well, you're seeing her right there stand up and actually show why she's there, why she's his partner, not just spouse or mate. That's his partner. That's the person he goes to for advice and for just that general life. And I thought that was and again, I loved how it kept showing though with the Justice League throughout this. They're going from plan A to plan B. You see just the different levels of strategery they're doing in dealing with this massive threat. First, they're trying to hit. Well, sheer power didn't do it. Hey, let's get the people out of here. Can we open a boom tube? Move it. No, too big, but I can boom tube the people out. So they're doing all these different levels. Plan A, plan B, plan C. They kept going through the different options, and they didn't lay down. They didn't quit. And I think that for me is always a Justice League moment. Then right as, the Greens come in for a big help, but they're still down. What do we got to do? Bam! Big Blue shows up for the final, that final nail in the coffin, that final piece we need to do right now. And I thought that for me was just a boom, 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 layering of the attack, just that the team building, the birth of the Justice League. I was very excited for this, going, man, I want to see more of this.
One of the things that I really like is, as you mentioned, that this sense of desperation, what's happening to the people of Earth. They can't quit. If they quit, look how many people are affected by that. I really loved that there was this sense of scale to the whole thing. One of my favorite sequences is totally a geek out sequence. Consider yourself warned. We stand guard here. We're the Justice League. Man, was that cool. And that obviously the last page shot, they are our heroes, the Justice League, and just seeing them together again. Great group. I like the choice of the two Green Lanterns of Earth right now joining this team. It was great to see them on there. It makes sense storytelling-wise. I like when a team book reflects what's going on in the greater universe. Just seeing this whole thing together just works really, really well. The artwork took me a little getting used to on this book. And I'm just going to say that. In my second read-through, and I was kind of going through enjoying the art, I'm like, wow, I'm really starting to like the art on this book. But it was something, just because I was so used to some of the styling that was in the previous Justice League books, this one really hit it out of the park. And I'm excited for the team. I hope they can continue delivering this, because Justice League, in its best, tells big, epic stories. And to follow Jeff Johns after what he just delivered, I don't know that I'd want to do that. But this was a good first issue.
Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned the artwork, and that was something it didn't really... there wasn't any hiccup for me on that one, I think. I think this was just kind of because I do like this style of artwork, so I was like, it is a little different than what especially when you look at, what we just talked about in this issue. But for me, I think, I don't know, I liked it right from the start.
I liked it, but I wasn't really sold on it until, honestly, my second read through, it disappeared. And I only reference that because it's an honest answer. I was kind of I was very used to some of the art styling that we had in the previous book. Yeah, remember, we're following up Jeff Johns and a out of the park creative team. So I'm like, whoa, okay. I really like this issue. I mean, you heard me salivating before about it, so I really like the issue. It just took me an adjustment. That was all. And sometimes you just need that adjustment. And that's, for me, sometimes the second read-through is where, okay, I'm settling it, I'm getting it now. I get the storytelling vibe. I get what this artist is trying to do. I get what the whole art team's trying to do, I should say. And that's, where I kind of absorb into that one. Sometimes my first read is not the best one for me to judge the art. I really need the second one to kind of wrap my head around thematically what the team's doing. It's why I like going back into a book again. Because if I'd just done my first read-through, I would have been telling you, I wasn't crazy about the art. After the second read-through, I really enjoyed the art. So I think it's just an honest experience with the whole thing. How I needed to kind of settle in and understand thematically what they're trying to do. And it made for a better book for me.
You know what sequences I really enjoyed on my second and third read through?
What?
Were the Watchtower sequences. I the first time through, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But when you get that second and third read through, you really actually go more into it, and you really see just the interactions. I loved, especially again when we get Diana dealing with this, where she's angry, she's still, mourning the loss of, Clark. And, you still see that. You see just her going through the various emotions and she's got to deal with. And I love just in those Watchtower sequences where they kind of all let their guard down and they can actually, show emotion. And those were some really cool moments for me that I thought were, it was like, first read, I was like, yeah, that's kind of neat. That's cool. But it wasn't until you really get to feel the power when you go back through and you read it a second and third time. And I think those were sequences where you take some time with, and especially the Batman moments. You gotta love when Batman is just being Batman, where he's got I don't trust him. I trusted our Superman, our friend, but he died. This other one, we gotta invite him. We keep him close enough until we can figure out what really happened. And I love just that, again, Bruce is bringing him in, and he's saying, yeah, sure, you're part of the team, but he's still Batman. He's not just opening the keys, to the kingdom. He's going to keep a close eye on him. And I think, and the neat thing is, Clark knows what Bruce is doing, because he knows his friend well enough to know, okay, if he's anything like the Bruce Wayne I know, he's only bringing me in to keep a closer eye on me. And so, I think that for me is going to be that moment when these two realize just how much the other is like the person they know. And I think that's going to be a really cool Bruce Batman moment. And I think we'll probably get that in the Justice League title.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We'll probably get that in the Justice League title too. This is a book that they did a great job of bridging the changes that are going on in the universe, and that's what you need to do with these Rebirth books a lot of times, is kind of tell us, how does this fit into the new status quo? And man, they got a lot of stuff going on that I'm just really excited about that hasn't even been released yet. Speaking of books that I'm excited about that haven't been released yet, we definitely have time to talk about Detective Comics 936, and I think you know why I want to talk about this book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great job, Nostradamus.
I was doing the happy. Well, it was funny because it was a bittersweet where I was doing the happy dance, but I was like, dang it, man. But the neat thing is, the dad turns out to be the villain, but is he a villain? Is he doing the right thing, the wrong thing for the right reasons? And again, I love the fact that it's not just cut and dry, he's a bad guy. There's a little bit more to him. Even when he had the chance, he didn't kill. He uses the tranquilizers. He didn't kill Batman. He just took him off the board because he knows Batman would stop his plans. So I love the fact that he's not a cut and dry, evil bad guy, but he is the bad guy in the story. So again, it's bittersweet moments.
See, here's the thing with that one. People can sometimes use good reasons to justify doing horrible things, and they're wrong. In this case with him, he's wrong.
Yeah.
And and that's not disputing you, it's disputing him. I love that what you're saying is very real. That is a part of all this. And if you're not paying attention to the fact that this guy is doing things and trying to justify them for intrinsically good reasons, if he thought he was being so right about all this and that he was pure and just, why not talk to his daughter? Why not make that work? Deep down in your gut, you know when you're doing something wrong. And when you do, you get more and more secretive about it. I'm going to be very interested in seeing the backstory, more of the backstory of this develop as the storyline goes on. That's the part I really love, though, because we're going to have to do, I think, with a lot of these other issues, because I do want to go back through and talk about more of these books on this episode. We're going to do some more quick hits with this one, but there's so many sequences I want to talk about from this particular event that I really loved. Seeing Renee Montoya, Kate Kane together, I thought was just a pure geek out moment, because I love that relationship was a part of all this. Seeing that she has a history of looking for people to validate her when she already knows what she wants to do. You know, she already knows. And I like Renee called her out on that one. And I think a jilted lover is really the only one that can get away from doing that kind of thing, because they know you. They know your ins and outs. They've been there before. And they're the only one that can, in many ways, I think Renee cares about her enough to just be blunt and to just say, look, you need to hear this, whether you like it or not. And, you know, this might mean we never talk again. And that's all well and fine. But if there's one service I've done you in this moment, it's pointing out the fatal flaw in your strategy. and I really liked that sequence because, again, talk about feeling like it's grounded in the real world. It really felt like a real relationship.
Oh, God, yeah. And like you, I was so excited when I saw Renee was around and I saw the relationship, I saw the connection, but also, again, exactly as you said, it's that familiarity, that comfort they have with each other, that she can call her on the BS. And she dropped it right there. It was just one of those things where you're like, yeah, all right. Because, again, laying down the ground, we want to see this story. Where does this play out? What is the kind of connection? Is this a one and done, or is she going to come back later on? Obviously, she's probably going to come back later on, just because I can't see them, not using that character, especially if this is going to be kind of a team dynamic type book. Renee Montoya is a great person to have in the story and part of the team, and just her connection to who she is or who she was and who she could possibly be in the future. So this was something right out the gate that I was very happy with, and I was very, this is an awesome Bat book, and it really doesn't even have Batman in it. It has the Bat team. It has that concept, and I was like, man, this is a way to tell this story. This is awesome.
I mentioned this on a previous episode. This is what the Batman and the Outsiders were for me. It isn't just about Batman, and if you make it just about Batman, it goes horribly wrong. It's about Batman's interaction with a group of people. A group of people that are really associated with his universe, which the Outsiders were. It's different than the Justice League, and there's a validity to this that makes it so interesting. We see the sequence where he gets his butt kicked and Red Robin shows up, and he's filling her in, and she catches quickly that it's military form, and he just, says it's an organization called the Colony, but this part I really love. So what should we do? You're frustrated, aren't you? Batman told you that you were in charge. And then he told you exactly how he wanted you to run this whole operation. I bet you didn't even have a say who was on the team. I don't. He's a frustrating guy, trust me. I know. He thinks he knows exactly what he wants and what he doesn't. And he thinks he's right all the time. But at the end of the day, he's always right about people. When he lets someone in, that means something. When he puts you in charge, it was so in this exact situation, you would be calling the shots. And I trust that, because I trust him, even if I want to strangle him sometimes. So tell me, what do you think? Batman wouldn't want to set off the alarm, and she goes into this whole little thing after that. Dude, Tim Drake out of the park.
I know. Again, this one right here was a great usage of Tim, and this was the Tim Drake that we both were like, yes, I absolutely love. This is the kid. This is, we're getting Tim Drake back. And, the new 52 Tim, I love that Tim. I'm not knocking that, but the pre-Flashpoint Tim Drake was a different level of character. This kid right here, this guy right here, this is that same Tim Drake. And we've been seeing that periodically. We've seen that, in a couple different stories, especially stories that were told by James Tynion IV. He knows how to write Tim Drake. He knows how to do this character. He knows this Bat family. And I'm absolutely... It's one of the reasons I'm so pumped that he's writing detective.
But here's the thing we know now, and this is the crazy twist about what's happened with this whole rebirth concept. It is that Tim Drake. Yeah. Because of the fact that this is done to them.
Yeah.
They are them.
Yeah.
What a great thing. I really love this whole story and how it's all playing out. And it makes these books feel a little different just by the nature of that piece. So, in going through the issue, I love Orphan. I love seeing... I don't care about the Orphan name. I've seen some people crack on that one. Orphan was the best name you can come up with. I'm like, well, it's story-driven. I don't know. I'm just glad she's back. I love that character. Seeing the fight sequence with her on the roof, I like how that kicked off. I love that the mask is very much that mask that we originally saw in Cataclysm. And seeing her wearing that again... and kind of going back to her roots is something that I really love about that character. Cassandra Cain is one of my favorite creations, and I'm just really glad to see her back in form, in just the way you expect her to be. I don't care what you call her.
You know what? I actually like the name Orphan. I like why they did it and who, it's, and I any criticism for it, to me, I think Orphan is a better name than calling her Batgirl, because Orphan is personalized based on who she is. Where, Batgirl is Batgirl, and there is that level of mystique. And I wasn't reading when she became Batgirl, so truly I can't comment on her becoming the Bat, part of the Bat family. But for me, Orphan is something more personalized. It's kind of like how with Dick Grayson going back to being Nightwing. Why he is Nightwing. It's not just, another name, or, even it's a nod, an homage to a superhero, a Superman person, as well as kind of a nod to Batman. No, there's something more about Nightwing being Nightwing, and that's who he is. I thought that it's kind of that same thing. I have that same feeling with Orphan. She is Orphan. This is why she is. This is who she is. So I really like the fact that she is, she is her own person. She is doing this way.
You totally didn't read when she was Batgirl.
Right, I didn't. But I admit that. So who knows? Maybe I'll have a completely different mindset if I read that. But for me, right here, right now, I really like this. I think this, for me, this has a more powerful story behind it.
No, and let me clarify that. Because the same thing you're saying about Orphan is how I felt when she became Batgirl. She was Batgirl. So I don't say that to dispute you. I really like her as Orphan too. So the Orphan name, for every reason you just said, check. I'm very happy with Barbara Gordon being Batgirl again. I'm happy with Stephanie Brown being Spoiler. I'm happy with her being Orphan. I don't think necessarily, it's kind of, you mentioned this with Nightwing. Here's the thing. Dick Grayson as a hero, as we found out when he became Grayson, as we found out when he was Robin, as we found out when he was Nightwing both times, or 87 times now because of the changing roles. It's not the name. It's his confidence in who he is. Orphan, you see her become more and more confident in this character and what she wants to do and what her code, you talk about a code, she's got a warrior's code to her. As somebody who is trained to be an assassin, who wants to step away from that, who wants to follow the code of the Bat, it just fits, and I really love that concept of her story and where it's going. I love that the mask is an homage to what she was before this universe, and that's really important to me because, I'm a fan from that. I want to feel like this is the same girl. Her evolution is really important to me, and we're geeking out. It's funny how you can have two different experiences with a character and be geeking out in similar ways, and we are definitely doing it with the handling of this character.
Oh God, yeah. And again, we were both. It's funny because we're arguing, but we're not really arguing.
No, not
we're
at all.
Both saying it's awesome. It's one of the things that you and I do a lot of times. We have different points, viewpoints, different opinions, but it is basically leading the same way. That this is a really well crafted character, and this is a character who has been crafted up into this point. And again, going forward, I'm looking forward to more about who she is and what she's about. Because it was neat that when they were all away, Stephanie was sleeping, Clayface was going on interview, but not in but she was sitting there just looking at the ballet dancing, just that sweet, peaceful calm, from this, what a lot of times is just a walking ball of rage, of warrior, of violence, and you see her just sitting there looking at that serene sequence. And I thought that for me was kind of a neat thing, showing the different people, doing the different stuff.
Escape hatch. That whole bit was awesome. I love that with Clayface, they've already worked out a system that they haven't tried yet. The first time to try escape hatch. To me, the confidence of Batwoman was the coolest part there. I love this character. Man, I trusted you, Dad. I brought you here to show you the kind of leader I've become. Now you're going to have to learn the hard way. What I love, though, that was initiated by the Lieutenant. Tim Drake initiated that play. And that team dynamic, that concept, really played out well here with two characters who I really feel should be in that role. Batwoman and Tim Drake together is really a great dynamic. I love that about this book. I want this book to continue. I love that this first team that they're fighting, this first group that they're fighting seems so epic and huge. But I want to see this team stay together beyond that because of the dynamic that's already being built here that I think is just taking these characters back to a place I've loved them in and going beyond. That's part of Rebirth that I think is interesting too. It's not about just putting back in play the elements that we loved before. It's about taking the next level. Where do we take them now? Where do we take them in a modern era? How do we take these things that people love about DC, put them back into play, make them relevant to now, make them cool now? This makes them cool now. Really cool book.
Yeah, a thought just popped in my head. Well, two thoughts just popped in my head.
Sure.
One, there's a scene that is a funny moment that didn't take away from the drama of going on. Is when the team is reviewing the Batman fight sequence and he's getting his butt kicked. And Clayface goes, "Oh wow, that was a good hit. I always wanted to pull off something like that." And then everyone looks at it and goes, "What? A good hit's a good hit." I love that sequence where, again, it was a little funny jab, and it was a little funny moment, but it never really took away the serious drama of it. And again, that for me is talented writing when you have funny moments intermixed with action and adventure, and those comic moments don't take away from the seriousness of the situation. So again, another just kudos as to how awesome of a writer he is. But also, what if this is all a setup? What if the General, Colonel Kane is in on the whole deal? That the beat up of Batman was all staged, and this was all done to give this Batwoman's team like a final exam to see how they could deal with this. Because think about it, Kane saying, "Hey, I'm not," he keeps saying how he's not the bad guy and why he didn't bring his daughter in because he knew, she would need to be recruited in on her own and this and that kind of stuff. But what if all this is just a giant setup?
I think you're completely insane. I think your first time I was like, I could totally see where Jim's going with this one. He's leading the colony.
But I know, but what if? I don't know. I'm still holding on that he's a good guy, dang it. Let me have this, okay?
Wait, no. I let you have the other one, and you were right, and I could see the premise for that one.
Yeah.
This, you're grasping at straws. Because what's the point of the team being together if it isn't the colony?
Yeah, I don't know. I know. I'm reaching here. I'm grasping. But, again, part of the things, though, I do wonder how he was able to take down the security shields. How he was able to, set up Batman the way he did. As you think about it, when they set up Batman, they set him up good. They got him jumped, they blocked him off, and they, because you think back to the issue where they show Batman getting his butt kicked, the vehicles were on stealth mode. They, Bruce could physically see him, but they weren't coming up on his tech and everything. Just the level that they did there. It's kind of a neat. It's kind of a neat thought that the level that Kane is at right now against Bruce and against this team. So I don't know.
His daughter, and he knows this, is Batman's co-captain.
Right.
So that's his in.
But behind the tech, though, that's what I want to know. I want to see where he's getting the tech from. Who's building his tech? How did he come across this? I want to see what the colony actually is.
Yeah. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I completely misunderstand, and I agree with you. I want to know more.
Well, no, I'm done with he's a good guy. I'm past that. That was just a last desperate attempt to hold on to the fact that he's a good guy. Now I'm into the fact that he is the bad guy. And where did he come from? How did he do this? Because he is a brilliant tacticianer. I'm not gonna. We've seen just how. How on the level he is of strategery he has, that he could pull something like this off. But the tech side of it, the backing side of this, everything that's going through on this, where is that coming from? Part of me was thinking this could be a court, but it's not the Court of Owls. This is something beyond that. This is something that is, out there. And again, whenever I think Bat Universe, and whenever I think massive organization that's out there that knows Bruce as well as anybody else, of course, the first name that always pops to my head is Ra's al Ghul. But this doesn't seem like League of Assassins. This doesn't seem like that, but this is somebody who's on par with that. So I want to know who this is. How did he get pulled into it? Because in those dialogues between him and Kate, he flat out says, hey, I've been doing this since day one. This has been the plan all along, to have you come in, lead this team. You want your people in? Fine. You can keep training them, or we run them through the system. We run them through the machine, and we, turn it, it'll do them all benefit to be a little bit army strong. I like how, he's looking at that. And it's, I want to know who and what he is.
Does it have to be somewhere else, though? What if it's him? What if it really was? What if he's the mastermind? Like, what if they're crafting here her dad to be the villain we never knew he was? I mean, what if this is adding a new villain to the mythos?
I'd be okay with it, to be honest with you, just because we've seen this guy at this level where I could see him doing this, but again, part of me always wonders, is there somebody else on the mix? If it turns out it's all him, kudos. This is, again, we're creating a villain who's on Batman level. We're creating another Ra's al Ghul here. And I've got no issues with that because, again, it's kind of, it fits. You can see this person doing this. Again, you could see him taking, the wrong actions for the right reasons. He's trying to, what he thinks is the right thing. He's trying to help. He's going to save the world. And I love how even throughout to her, like, you don't know how many people we've saved already. So he's trying to justify what he's doing and why he's doing it. He's justifying why he kept her in the dark. And it's, again, it's the whole, is it he protests too much, or does he honestly and truly believe this?
Speaking about what to believe and what not to believe, can we talk about Batman issue number 2?
Sure.
Because, I was walking in under the assumption that Gotham and Gotham Girl are going to be bad guys. I'm not sure. And I like that part of the story. It has me intrigued. I'm like, I don't know that I'm right. And I could be. But I don't know. They seem pretty heroic in this one. I love the whole battle with Solomon Grundy, how they seem green and they're trying to help out. It is Batman kind of leading these two people who are very superpowered like Superman. Batman teaching them that, listen, your timing was off and your playing around with him was not a good thing, because look at who could have been hurt by Solomon Grundy running off down this path. You would have never reached him in time to stop him from innocents being hurt during this. And so you got to be better. And I really liked that sequence because it shows the importance of strategy and experience.
Yeah, and again, it kind of a neat moments of this regular quote unquote man who is schooling these mega powers and Kryptonian like powers. We don't know if they're Kryptonians. We don't know who they are, what they are, and how they got their abilities. But it is those were some cool moments. Especially you said how they would have caught Grundy in 1.3 seconds. Well, that man would have been trampled in 0.7 seconds. And he threw it out there. And if it was anybody else, I would say he was just throwing out the number and he didn't actually technically know. But because it is Batman, for a fact he knew exactly how it was down to. He had it down to the 0.7 seconds for that to happen. And again, like you, I don't know if they're good guys or bad guys. Initially, I was immediately, you're thinking bad guys just because if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Well, is that the case with these two? I don't know yet. And I like the fact that I don't know, and I'm still wondering, and I'm still just trying to figure out who exactly they are, how they are. I'm waiting for the moment for Bruce to figure it out, because hopefully they'll tell us once he knows.
Yeah, and that's... do you think that it's a foregone conclusion that they're bad guys?
I'm still leaning towards yes, just because history has taught us that. But there's no real solid evidence that I can see that says they're bad guys. All the evidence right now is pointing towards that they're not bad guys. They're just an unknown entity. So I'm leaning towards that, yes, they're bad, but that's just solely because it's always been that way in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued. I'm actually really intrigued by that question now, because if they are, Tom King is doing, and the whole creative team is just doing a great job of painting me to think of possibilities. And I like that. Go ahead, swerve me. I don't care. intrigued me enough in the story that I care. Like, I really should care about these people right now, one way or another, and I do. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen. I like that this leads to the Bruce discussion about I Was Dead, looking about successors taking over, talking about Dick Grayson taking over his mantle, what this looks like. Because you would look at 2 new Supermen in Gotham. What does that mean? What does that mean for the future? What does it mean for him? Is he going to be needed all that time? What if they can help him accomplish things faster? What if they can take over for him? Should they take over for him? All kinds of questions that would run through your head. I like that this was like, I see a million different things racing through Bruce's mind right now, a million different possibilities. And him being Batman handling it the way that he is. And I love seeing that being handled in a discussion with Alfred, who's one of the only people he's going to be that open with.
Yeah, and I like the fact that we're not getting the inner dialogues. We're not getting the thought bubbles. We're just getting the artwork. We're just getting the words that are thrown on the page. And I think that for me is something that's kind of cool. Because again, when he was telling the story with Grayson, he did that, and he's still continuing that same story style. And especially with this mystery of who Gotham and Gotham Girl are, it adds to it, because you have, again, it's that mystery of who they are, what's going on. By not having that inner dialogue, we're only getting the evidence right now that Bruce has. And I think for me, that's kind of that's the best way to tell a mystery story.
I actually bought you a new action figure, Jim. It's Bob Castro with the mail opener.
Oh, thanks.
I know you always like a complete set.
Yes.
So
yes.
Definitely wanted to get you that one. And that whole sequence was great because it was creepy. And, this Monster Men thing, right now you've got these 2 heroes in Gotham, this, truly superheroic heroes there. And everything looks bright and cheery. The Monster Men, not so much so. What does that mean? And how are these 2 tied in? I don't know. I can't wait to see what this means. Great creepy setup for reason why Jim Gordon would be calling in Batman and the new team. And I love that they've got this crazy cool superpowers, but they're on the roof and they can't find out where he went. So awesome.
Well, and Gordon just threw out all this. I love that. Is it really easier to fight crime with a mask on? I think it would itch. Because Gordon's like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. And I love just this moment, and especially with what you're saying about how he disappears. Like, yeah, he does that.
The sequence with Bruce dancing with the girl and then having to leave. I love how suave he looked in that. I'm really excited. This week they released the trailer. Telltale Games, who does the Walking Dead games, and they're like I don't know if you grew up playing any of the point-and-click PC adventure games, Jim.
Yeah,
but Telltale does like modern versions of those with that work on all the consoles. They work on the PC. They've done an amazing job with the Walking Dead games, the most recently ones that I really, really enjoyed quite a bit. Well, they're releasing they got a deal with DC. They're releasing a Batman one where you play as Batman and Bruce Wayne. And there's times where you have to make the decision to handle situations as either Batman or Bruce Wayne, and it's your choice. But there's consequences that it's an episodic game, which means I think there's 5 episodes if they follow their traditional format. The choices you make in each episode impact the story direction of the episodes that succeed it. So you really are choosing the path of the story. So if you choose to handle it as Bruce Wayne, it has a direct impact on the story. You choose to handle it as Batman, it has an impact on the story.
Cool.
So they said they're really going to develop the story around introducing the duality, and there's going to be heavy moments involving Bruce Wayne. The artwork looks incredible, and I was really looking at that because I'm looking at these moments where you see Bruce in that moment, the bat signal's there, having to handle this situation. I'm like, I can't wait to play this game. It comes out August 2nd now, is the official release date of the first episode, and I'm geeking out. It's going to be on like every major game system and the PC. So, I don't know, people out there, you really should check this one. Check out the trailer for it. It looks really cool because it's on a new version of their engine, and I'm glad that they updated their game engine, to kind of compensate for a new era. And I love that one of the first games we're getting out of that engine is going to be Batman. Man, I am so stoked for this. So I don't know. It's really cool stuff. It's a good time right now to be a DC fan with this kind of thing coming out. The Hugo Strange reveal at the end, I thought was great because I liked seeing it from the patient's perspective. We're basically looking through Hugo's eyes at this patient and seeing what he's up to. I can't wait to see where this goes. And is he tied in with this Monster Men thing?
That's what I'm assuming. I'm assuming that Hugo is the power behind the Monster Men because the guy went into Gordon's office, stabbed himself in the throat. So we know that Strange has been able to do that kind of influences on people. And we're seeing it with this one guy here. So I'm assuming Hugo Strange is the person who's in charge of the Monster Men.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't wait to see what happens with Amanda Waller. Why is she involved? Why is the government involved? Where is this going? I just can't wait. Really, really great introduction to this.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
Howdy, Sean and Jim. This is Mike Gordon, and it's been a long time. I'm sorry about that. It's been a long time since I've sent you guys a voicemail or anything like that. So, but I could not keep quiet about this particular book that I'm about to rave about because it is one of the best books I've read all year, and it is easily one of the best books I've read in a long, long time. And it is, coincidentally, a DC Vertigo book. It's one that you guys mentioned on the show a few weeks back in reference to being available at in-stock trades. And this is a book that got by me, too. When it was originally solicited, I had no idea. I didn't see it at all. Which is odd because I really like the work of Paul Dini. He's one of my favorite storytellers. The art is by Eduardo Rizzo, and I'm a big fan of 100 Bullets from Vertigo, as well as some of his other work. So, and this has Batman in the title. So this is, I don't know how this got by me. I didn't know if I guess I just didn't know what it was when it was originally solicited. If it was a collection of stories or what it was based on or what it was about. But a friend of mine actually bought it a few weeks ago, about a month ago, whenever it came out, and recommended it to me. So I was like, okay, well, I will definitely go to the store and buy that because, I mean, it's got, like I said, with Dini's writing and Rizzo's art, as well as, being a Batman-related book, I was interested and intrigued, and I was willing to pay the additional price point because the original hardcovers can be kind of pricey. So good for you guys for advertising the in-stock trades price because that's a better deal. But regardless of what you pay, this story is well worth every penny. It's a very personal story. It's not a typical Batman story by any means. It's a very personal story about an event that happened to Paul Dini, an unfortunate event, and the healing that went into recovering from that event. And although I've been fortunate, I've never been through something as physically hard or demanding as what Paul went through. I think I was still able to personally identify with him and understand what he was going through on some levels. So it was I could definitely relate to it, and the struggle is real. I mean, it talks about a lot of things, even outside of the actual physical event that happened to him, about sort of getting your life back in order and sort of being inspired by fictional characters, and how even sometimes we get kind of caught up on escapism and get blasted for it, about how the stories that you watch or the movies that you go to, the comics that you read don't matter. But in some cases they really do, and they really can inspire you in your real life and help you out. And this book is a perfect example of that, both inside the tale itself and outside, because reading it, I was just inspired and had even more. I have even more respect for Paul Dini than I did before, and I didn't think that was possible because I thought he was an incredible storyteller. But in any case, I definitely encourage people to read this. I'm sure it'll be available some point in paperback if people want to wait that long, but I definitely encourage it. I mean, at that in-stock trade price, and I don't work for them either. But that you can't go wrong with that deal. But regardless, it is really, really a good story. It is a Vertigo book, so it's not for kids, unfortunately. Although, there's some really adult... It's not, too R-rated. But obviously, people can make their best judgment about that. But the story is one that I'm glad that Paul sat down and finally wrote, and it was beautifully presented by DC and Vertigo. So kudos to them. I don't know if you guys have read it yet, so I hope I didn't spoil anything for anybody out there, because it's a good read, and I definitely encourage everybody to check it out. So you guys keep up the good work. I've been definitely enjoying the Rebirth episodes. I've been enjoying Rebirth in general, particularly the Bat books, as well as Wonder Woman. I think Wonder Woman's my favorite title right now, and I'm proud to say that. The having Greg Rucka back writing that book has just made all the difference, and the art teams on it are spectacular. So I don't think she's ever been in better hands, and that's saying a lot, because we've had some really good creators, as you guys have pointed out, especially recently. So I've been enjoying that, as well as a lot of the other Rebirth titles too. So thank you guys for covering all that, as well as everything else you do. So you guys keep recording, and I will keep listening. So take care.
I'm a big fan of Mike's. I've actually been joined a few times on the Earth Station Who podcast over at the Earth Station 1 community, and really had a great time talking about Doctor Who. But I knew Mike quite a bit before that from comic conventions, and got the opportunity to meet him there, and I'm proud to consider Mike a friend. The thing I love about this book, Jim, have you had a chance to read it yet?
I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Okay, I'm not going to spoil anything. I thought Mike's introduction to it was absolutely brilliant, because it's spoiler free, but it tells you the premise of the book. The nice part is, I think as comic fans, you really should read it. And here's the reason why. It really does validate a lot of what comics do for us. And Mike's so right on this one. I loved it because of the fact that the story was inspirational. It talks about how, we wind up being better people because of reading these comics and learning about these heroes, and kind of aspiring, to things that these heroes have accomplished. And that's something that's interesting about escapist fiction. It does kind of give you this pick-me-up sense. And I think it's important sometimes to escape from your troubles and to be able to use it. I know, over the past couple of years, I lost both of my parents. That helped me get through that. I mean, there's a lot to be said for these books that we read and what they do for us. I think it's important to have those kind of outlets to break away from everything. I know, you and I both, we have work stresses and things like that. And I love my job. Don't get me wrong on that end. But any job has a certain amount of stress to it. I think there's that case. In the case of Paul Dini's story, it's a deeply personal story, but you connect with it on whatever level's appropriate to you. And I think there's something to be said about the way that he shared what was going on with him. I didn't know what this was going to be, because I'm like, it's Paul Dini, Dark Knight, a true Batman story. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be this really cool Batman story. And there's Batman in this, in the sense that it's how Batman inspired Paul Dini. And I really like seeing the character from that lens. And there's something to be said about the way that this story tells that. It's a 128-page hardcover, and it is still available at InStockTrades.com at 45% off, $12.64. And I'm not saying that for any other reason other than I agree with Mike. If you haven't read this, you really should. And it's a trade paperback price for a hardcover. I would say get the hardcover only because of the fact that it's just a really nice presentation. These DC hardcovers, the originally created hardcovers that they put out, they seem to be very selective on how they put these out and what creative teams they're putting on them and what premises they're using to drive putting these out. And I think that really shows in terms of quality, because I think these are really quality books that I would hand to anyone. This one completely flew under my radar, not because I didn't know that it was coming out. I did. This has been talked about for quite some time. I think just the release date was something that totally blew me by. I missed it in my my DCB service order, and had to go through in-stock trades because I missed it. It's odd for me to miss something like this too, because like you said, it's a Batman book. I mean, in and of itself, it's a Batman title. I don't know how I missed this one, but I'm really glad I have it. I've read it cover to cover and loved every minute of it. I don't want to spoil it for you in particular, Jim, and obviously for any of our listening audience. it's a great read, and I do think it's something that flew under people's radars.
Well, and here's the funny thing. Here's a funny story about this, because when we talked about it and you promoted it, and I was like, how did I miss that? Because I was like, how did I miss that? So I actually jumped online and I picked up a digital version, $14.99, and I had it, and I haven't had a chance to sit down and read it. But then I was going through my boxes because I was way behind on opening and sorting my boxes because of when I was in Italy. I was gone for a while there, and everything was behind. And as I'm opening the boxes, I see it sitting right there within my order. I did remember to order it from DCBS. I completely forgot I had ordered it. It completely just slipped my mind, and I even looked on my little spreadsheet that I keep track of all my orders, and I didn't see it on there. I completely forgot to mark it down. It must have been one of those things where I saw Dark Knight, Paul Dini, and I clicked yes, and I forgot that I actually ordered it. So I have it digitally, I have it physically, and I keep wanting to sit there. It's in my queue to read, but I'm always getting pulled away for something. I'm getting ready for the show. I gotta have a moment where I sit down and just read it for my enjoyment.
What's up, Sean and Jim? It's David Wallace here. I know it's been a long time. I think the last time I submitted anything to the website or the podcast was probably in around 2008, which, when you start thinking about the fact that it was almost a decade ago that I initially submitted the idea for the original Raging Oscars, it's kind of crazy. Not crazy enough that I'm back sending you this message, but more the fact that you guys are still doing it. And I think that's a real testament to your passion and your desire and your love for the comics that you're reading. And I just want to say thank you, first of all. So the reason that I'm sending this message is because you originally asked in one of the recent podcasts whether or not anybody had been brought back to DC Comics, and I have been. And when I say that I have been, it wasn't that I left the New 52, it was that my passion for DC Comics dwindled. Severely dwindled. To give you guys an idea, back when the podcast started and back when we were in the throes of 52, Countdown, all of that stuff, I was reading everything that DC published under the DC brand, with the exception of Legion. I'm sorry, I've just never liked the Legion. Well, it's not that I've never liked them, it's just that I've never really devoted enough time to them. And I was reading everything, and I loved everything. Every week was an absolute joy. And then the New 52 happened. And for the start, everything was awesome. I was reading a lot. I was reading most things. But what I very quickly found with the New 52 was that I stopped caring. There were some books which obviously I continued on with. Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman was an early success for me. The Justice League titles by Jeff Johns were absolutely fantastic. I even read Scott Snyder's Batman run, and I am one of those very few naysayers who actually didn't particularly like Scott Snyder's Batman run. I thought his implementation of some of the characters was unnecessary. Mr. Freeze, for example, even though he never played a major part in it, I just thought that the reintroduction of a lot of these characters was unnecessary. And it was that sort of thing that really dissuaded me from really picking up any major books. The only time in the New 52 that I was completely on board and bought everything was the crossover event Convergence. I mean, I would have done it purely for the Oracle Nightwing comic book itself, because quite honestly, that cliffhanger at the end of issue 1 is possibly one of the best cliffhangers ever in a comic book. I'm Barbara frickin' Gordon. I mean, who doesn't love that? Even though Convergence itself was, at best, a low C rank book in terms of the actual title. But then the Rebirth happened, and suddenly the passion was there again. And it isn't a false passion. It isn't something that I feel I owe it to DC Comics to come back. I owe it to the characters, and these characters are fantastic. I mean, these are the best fictional characters that have ever been created and have ever been written. They are wonderful. The Rebirth is wonderful. There hasn't been, so far, a bad Rebirth book published. There hasn't even been a mediocre one, as far as I'm concerned. Superman is fantastic. I love the fact that we now have the pre-New 52 Superman back, and I love his new status quo. I've always found, Superman being my favorite superhero character, I've always found that despite all of the powers that he has and all of the complaints that he's overly powerful, is the fact that they always find a way to make Superman relevant. And I don't necessarily mean that relevant in a social way, though he genuinely is. You only have to look back at things like his interaction after in Smallville and in the 1970s to see just how relevant he actually is. But as somebody who is soon to be a father himself, I suddenly see a lot more of myself, or a lot more of what I would want to be as a person, in that character that's being written right now, and it is just fantastic. I can't wait for the Super Sons book to come out. That should be so much fun. So yeah, I just wanted to put this out there. If you're ever wondering whether or not there's a guy out there who maybe gave up on the New 52, I didn't give up, but I certainly didn't feel it. But Rebirth has re-energized me. It has brought me back into the fold. I'm listening to the podcast again. It is so nice to see you guys chugging along book after book after book, and seeing the enthusiasm from both of you is infectious. It really, really is. So anyway, guys, good luck, and I hope there's a Raging Bullets coming up soon, so I can put my Raging Oscars, so I can put my submissions into you guys. And take care, and all the best. Bye.
This honestly was probably one of my favorite things to hear, because I've been curious about that, because you and I have been here through the whole thing. I was hoping this was the case, that there are people that are finding that the Rebirth is reinvigorating them. Because here's the difference. Like, you and I both really loved and enjoyed the New 52, but this is different. I mean, it's markedly different. And I think as a fan, there's certain times in DC's history where I can go back. Forget DC. Let's take DC out of it. In comics history, where there's titles I was reading that have been revamped, a new creator comes on, some new status quo changes or something like that, that takes a book that I was enjoying and kicks it up to a level where I'm like, oh my gosh, I was digging that, but I had no idea. I mean, you could do this? And Rebirth's having that effect on me. So I was hoping that there are people that were like David, where it's kind of like, I don't know, New 52 for me just kind of, I lost interest. Yeah, they get it with this. And that's cool. I mean, and thank you for calling in for that in particular, because I can't speak to that. I can speak to the fact, though, that this is markedly different for me. As somebody who stands behind everything I've said and everything I've been enjoying, there's a tone difference. There's books that every single book is a headliner book for me. Like Wonder Woman, when I was talking about that, I was every bit. I'm a Batman guy, a Batman junkie. He mentioned he's a Superman guy. I was just as interested in reading Wonder Woman this week as I was, in this batch, I should say, as I was reading the Bat books. It just as good. I mean, just as exciting, and just going, whoa. And I really like that part of it. I like the honest, kind of approach to all that through it. It's amazing that it's been that long since we've talked to him.
I know.
Because it doesn't seem like that long for me, because, David's, obviously been a big part of our show historically. I love that about the podcast, though. I love that there's people that I could look through historically through the show and just go, these are people who've had connection with and become friends through the podcast, and David's certainly one of them, and it's great. I'm grateful that this has brought him back. So I'm hoping that more friends are connecting with comics again, and DC in particular again, through the quality of these books, because they are quality titles. And I'm sorry, Jim, there's something you want to say.
Well, I was just going to, echo some of your sentiments about just, how it is kind of neat hearing from him, hearing from other people, and just how it is that revitalization, that energy. Because you and I we were digging what was coming out, but we've both kicked it up a notch of how much we're enjoying this. We are seeing a more energetic in our reading, and just how much we're attacking this. If there was ever a time when you and I would say, we've had a good run, time to go away, now is definitely not the time, because I'm sitting there reading going, man, I can't wait to talk about this. Like, in this episode with the whole Detective Comics, with the reveal of the dad being the big bad and all that, as I was reading, I'm going, yes, woohoo! woo, doing a hooping and hollering because I knew we were going to have a cool discussion, and with the Wonder Woman stuff, I knew we were going to have a ball with that because there's so many different levels to talk about. And it's, for me, I'm enjoying reading even more. I'm looking forward to talking about it more. You and I have had just a really nasty week, so, we're just getting our teeth kicked in right now. And we're both at a point we're tired, but we're still energized because we're talking about something that we're very passionate and we're really enjoying about it. It's kind of, it gives me, a nice little kick shot in the arm, get you going again.
Well, and to a lot of what you're saying, in many ways, my schedule is so nuts right now. I'm selling 2 homes. and none of this is complaining, so please don't take it that way. It's just kind of putting it in perspective. I'm taking 2 classes, basically a half-time course load, while working full-time in an administration job in my school district. I'm working all summer. I don't really have the time off. To your point, if there was a time right now to wind down on the podcast, this would be it. I feel like I'm just starting it again. And I really mean that genuinely. Like, my enthusiasm for this because of the quality of these books is like, I want to talk about this. We recorded portions of this episode twice because I really wanted to talk about it. And honestly, I really feel like our second discussion was even better on a couple of the books, because both the Wonder Woman discussion, the Hal Jordan, and the Green Lanterns Rebirth discussion are discussions we've held twice now. It's funny how I would have never thought in a million years, we already talked about those, I don't want to talk about them again, I've phoned it in. I was just as enthusiastic to talk about them the second time through, and added new things to it because I've been thinking about them since. So it says a lot about the quality of these books that I wanted to do that. If anything, we got to a point right now where, like, I want to make sure we get to our voicemails, and we've talked about a lot of books. Let's make sure to do that, and we'll save some of these books that we can't get to this week for the next episode. Any title that we haven't talked about yet is not a title that is secondary to the ones that we talked about. It's just that we didn't get to them. And I mean, that's literally all it is. I love that. I love that I'm that excited. And David's point, I think, is really valid. I don't think there's been a mediocre... I really agree with him. I don't think there's been a mediocre release out of any of these. I think they've really paired some terrific creative teams together. The momentum that they've got right now. I mean, if you think a book's a stinker, totally get it. But there's at least so many other top quality books in this batch. I would be hard pressed to find somebody who can tell me they've read all of these and they didn't find at least one that they liked. I don't know how that's possible because the quality's that good. And I love that. I love that part of it. But it's great hearing from David again. And, it's I really forget sometimes when we do this how long we've been doing it, especially when you've got stuff like this going on. There's one thing I want to step back and talk about, though. He talked about the Convergence event, and it's funny, I was reflecting on it as he was talking, and I look back and I think about what did I like about Convergence, and it really was the tie-ins. No, I'm not knocking the miniseries. The miniseries was a good miniseries, and I don't think it was meant to be this. The miniseries was meant, and it came at a time when they were moving their offices, and I think that was a way to kind of make that happen, if I remember correctly, by the premise of it. I thought it was a good miniseries. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but it's one of those where the reverses are usually the tie-ins are the thing that's kind of secondary to the miniseries. I thought the tie-ins were the things that I was digging the most because there were so many of them that he mentioned that Nightwing and Oracle one. I thought the opportunity to see Tim Drake and Stephanie Brown, I thought was really fantastic as well. There's so many characters. I mean, gosh, Lois and Clark obviously, led to them being in our universe. So many things that they hit out of the park. Justice Society, I thought was great. It is an issue where I thought the tie-in issues to the event were the pieces I was enjoying the most because it was a chance to revisit some of the characters that I love so much, never knowing that it would lead to this. I wonder if back then they knew when they did Convergence that they were going to do this. Was it the germination of Rebirth? Did they know this was coming? I don't know. I would love to know the history of that.
I'm going to guess that it was.
Okay.
And the reason I'm guessing that is I think, when they were initially thinking of a concept and they wanted to make the change, I think this was something, with this whole idea of rebirth, and I don't think it's anything that they threw together that quickly. This is something they've probably been planning for a couple of years now. And I think, whether I'm not going to say they completely had everything, dotted and I's dotted and T's crossed, but I think that was the plan to make the transition and to introduce the new universe. And I think depending on how some people reacted, and especially seeing the love that people had for the Lois and Clark story, like, hey, let's pull this in, and I think that's where everything. But I think they were planning on doing this thing for a little bit now. But again, that's my wishful thinking. I'd love to think that somewhere in this room, they're all sitting around going, now what about this? I'd like to see this giant bullpen of ideas being thrown out and just, an open dialogue, this big giant table where they all sit around throwing out ideas and stuff like that. But that's, again, I think that's the romantic version I have of the comic book creation process.
I don't know when they came up with this, but it's honestly was a really great idea because it's putting back in some things that are very interesting to me. I can't wait to see where this goes, so it's good stuff. Good to hear from you again, David. Can't wait to hear from you again soon.
How you doing, Sean and Jim? This is Russell again, and I'd like to make an amendment to what I said about the 70s shows. I should have said I didn't enjoy them at the time they was out, but what my comparison was is what the things we're watching compared to today, and I don't understand why people complain so much, is what I should have said, because I still watch all those shows now. I still watch MeTV where they have the block between Wonder Woman, the Hulk, the Wonder Woman set, all the way up to Lost in Space every Sunday. I do that every Saturday while I'm reading books and stuff. So I still enjoy all that old nostalgia stuff from the 70s. I'm at issue on, I got to call a Jim moment for a moment. I said an issue. I'm at episode 45 and counting, and I'm on my way. Your podcast is very valuable. I will never get tired of listening to this because this stuff actually reinforces storylines of things you have missed in the past. It may reinvigorate you to read books. Only problem with me, like I said, I have 29,000 books. And to try to go through 29,000 books, find a certain issue, unless you two guys are going to come down and help me find it, won't happen. And on the new 50, on the new DC Rebirth, I hope we can get a League of Superhero books and a Justice Society of America book out of this rebirth. If not, I'm rioting. You guys have a pleasant day. I'm always listening to the podcast as long as it exists. And I love what you guys are doing, and you have a pleasant day. Thank you for your time, for doing what all you do. Thank you.
I love this guy. 29,000 books. I mean, like, his enthusiasm clearly matches ours. I'm like, 29,000 books. How do you know the number? And, like, obviously the issue is how do you catalog all that to find it? I would love to see it. Like, I'd love to see what his storage, like, how do you store, where, how do you store that? It's amazing to me. It's got to be all books.
I mean, I am deeply impressed because every time he says the number, you're just like, because I look at my stack. The way I've got mine laid out. I'm right now taking over 2 of my rooms in my house. I'm trying to figure out a better system, and I was hoping this summer was going to be the summer of the reorganization of my comics, and I'm looking at the Dewey Decimal System used in the modern libraries. I figure if it works for the Library of Congress, it'll work for my comic book collection. But I'm still trying to get re-familiar with it because I don't remember from my days in school where I actually knew what the system was. But I know. I'm trying to figure out the reference and cross-reference, and so if I figure it out, I'll explain it on the episode, and maybe you can use that to help organize your collection there, my friend.
But it would take him a lifetime to organize 29,000 books in the... Wait, okay, I got to ask. Okay. You're going to use the Dewey Decimal System. So what do you do, go through and tag every single book?
Yes.
According to the Dewey Decimal System?
Yeah.
Then what are you going to have, a card catalog?
Well, I'm thinking I'll probably use a computer as opposed to the actual card catalog system, but it'll be that, and it's going to be either I'll use an Excel spreadsheet or a database program to actually track where the location is, because it's all basically going to be about the tracking which drawer is a particular issue. Then it's the cross referencing that you're gonna that I'm going to use. So I may not have to put put a tag on every single comic, but I bunched the group together, put the tag there. But it's also going to be about into which drawer box is the, say, for example, Action Comics pre-Flashpoint Action Comics. Well, that's in box number A3, but if I'm looking, going, hey, what stories did Gail Simone do? I do a search by Gail Simone, and I'll pull up all of hers, and I'll know, okay, that's in box A3, B9, Z26, etc. So I'm looking at that kind of system. But again, that's the broad plan. I still got to figure out exactly how to implement it.
Is the Schwa-E going to get a box?
You know what? It wasn't going to, but now it will.
Because you got to have a box with the Schwa-E.
I will have a Schwa-E.
Right?
And I'll probably have a box that has the Interrobang on it.
Okay, all right. Have you thought about using one of the comic book database programs?
Oh, that'd be too simple.
Because some of them support, I used Comic Base for a while, and I actually really liked it. It's honestly I've had no time to follow up and update, but it's not just an endorsement for Comic Base. There's a lot of great programs out there, and actually anybody listening, if you use a comic book database program to organize your collection and you're really happy with it, feel free to call in and tell us why, because they can be good information for our listeners. But I know Comic Base supports barcode scanners and stuff like that. I have one, actually, and it makes it really easy to catalog your collection because you just scan the barcode and it tells you what issue it is and everything.
Well, so that'd be too easy for me. I don't do things the easy way. I do things the difficult way.
But I'm actually okay.
To be honest, that is actually a smart idea. Yeah. I'm being an idiot, but that's actually a pretty good idea.
But I'm sure there's ones out there, and actually, for listeners out there, if any of you are using that to catalog it the way that Jim's mentioning, I would, please call in and let us know what are you using. Why do you like it? How does it help you organize? How does it help you find? Because you're looking for two pieces. You're not just looking to catalog your collection. You're looking to catalog your collection and be able to pull it up and find out where it is by box, correct?
Yeah. Yes, I'm running into the same thing that Russell's running into, where you want to read an old issue, you got to find, how do I find it? And that was part of my main thing of why I wanted to reorganize my comics, because the way I currently organize them, I have active comics and retired comics. Now, my active comics, I'm dealing with what's currently out there, what's coming out, and that's stored in a certain spot. I'm using actually tabletops, and I actually stack them and stuff like that. But when a monthly series is retired, or when I take it, that's when I put it in the drawer box. And when I'm moving them into the drawer boxes, that's where I'm losing stuff. That's where I'm quote unquote losing. I'm not losing it; it's right there, but I'm not able to readily find it quickly. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, a way I can find some of this new 52. I can find the pre-Flashpoint. I can find even the 1 year later stuff that we first started talking about. Just pulling back when we first started the podcast, it was at that 1 year later story arc. I'd like to be able to find some of those issues and actually reread them again.
When you're talking retired comics, I'm like, I have retired comics issue 1. It's got Ambush Bug, For Bushman. It's got the original Blue Beetle, Dan Garrett. It's a great team. I don't know. I honestly think you should take a look at one of those programs. I don't know though. Is anybody using it? Because I've never used a program to organize it that way, and I'm really lax on cataloging my collection right now due to time. It's really a matter of reading them, and I've really got to go through and get back to organizing, because I used to have everything really neatly organized in Comic Base, and that's not a Comic Base issue, that's a my issue. I've never used them to catalog the way that you have, though. Anybody using anything to do that, we're using it as a method to find your books. Not just that you have it, but where it's located. I would love to hear that, because I think outside of Jim, I think there's a lot of our listeners that are like, I kind of would love to do that. Certainly our friend Russell with 29,000 books would love to, in an easy way, would love to be able to do that. Because I think if you go through the barcode scanner, you could eventually make even that monumental task happen, I think. I don't know. I honestly love his enthusiasm. To me, it does my heart proud, because Jim and I put a lot of time into this. And to know that somebody's finding value on our older material as well as our newer stuff, to me, what keeps me going about this is if somebody would ask me now what's my favorite episode, it would be the next one we're going to record. because I'm very enthusiastic to record this again because I like talking about the books and topics that we talk about. I really enjoy this. That's when I'm done. When I don't feel that, when I will never phone an episode of this. I will never do an episode where I don't really want to record and talk about this stuff anymore. That's when I'm done. I mean, it's really the time to hang it up. And to your point with our schedules, though, trying to find the time to record this is often very hard for us now, time-wise. We're still averaging 3 shows a month. And they're meaty episodes. And it's really because we like doing this. We like talking to you and really appreciate you as an audience for sticking with us and being patient with our episode releases and being participants, whether you're just a passive listener enjoying the podcast, you're active in that you tell other people about us, you participate in our Facebook group community, or you participate by doing voicemails or whatever to participate in the show. I really appreciate that you find some value in fitting us, whether we're your first or last podcast we listen to, or you listen to just sporadic episodes, that you're here. I don't know. It's encouraging to us to keep doing this. So I don't know. I'm in. But anyway, thank you, Russell, for calling in. We really appreciate it.
It's funny because he mentions the old TV shows and all that lately, and this is completely off track, so sorry, but the show I've been watching lately from back in the day, The A-Team, still holds up to this day. I still absolutely love that show. I don't know which channel it is, but the one channel has been running A-Team reruns, and every so often I catch it and I sit down and you watch it all over again.
I'm watching Lost in Space. He mentioned Lost in Space. I'm watching that. And I'm back to making my way gradually through the Batman 66 shows on because I got the Blu-rays.
Yeah.
And I'm making my way through that. What gets me, this is the time, now that I'm finally caught up on all of my shows, I'm watching Preacher as it's coming out, and which I'm digging.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm watching some older stuff now because I'm caught up. Lost in Space is what I'm really loving. I forgot how much I loved that show as a kid. One of my favorite programs. And I'm really, really digging watching the Batman 66 shows again. So it's just good stuff.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutron!
I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We actually have 2 more voicemails that are ready to go for our next episode, and I'm anxious to record both of these. One is from our longtime friend of the show, David Wallace, but we have 2 of them ready to go, and I can't wait to talk about those on our next show. Do not forget our show website, ragingbullets.com. It feeds into our Twitter, and we also have a Facebook fan page and a Facebook group community that I'm proud to be a part of, and we do share that with Infinite Comics. It's such a wonderful community of people. They have really taken over. If you haven't done a Facebook group community, check this one out. The people there really make it worth stopping by. It's just such a wonderful, fun community. Great, lively conversation about the topics that we all know and love. We're also on Google+. I have a PlayStation Network account. Lots of different ways to reach us, so please make sure to hook up with us because we love chatting with all of you. Jim, who is sponsoring us this episode?
Oh, of course, DCBS and their bundles. DCBS is continuing their support of the DC Universe Rebirth with 4 specialized bundles based on the different groupings that we've already had from the Rebirth. Each of these bundles, though, are 50% off. Plus, we've got the continuing support of Vertigo, all 10 Vertigo titles, 50% off. That one's only $21.90 for all 10 titles. And the variant covers, they're offering 45% off for all 49 of the DC Rebirth variant covers. The total is $83.66 for all 49. So thank you, DCBS.
InStockTrades.com has that Dark Knight, a True Batman Story hardcover. If you missed this one, and it was one of those that I've heard about for a long time, but I missed, it's $22.99 regularly for a 128-page hardcover, all original hardcover material. 45% off, only $12.64. It's a great way to catch up on this one, and I can't recommend the story enough. It's really a lot of fun. I think Mike really did it a good service in the voicemail, so definitely check that one out. Our next episode, Jim, we're going to keep continuing on this track. We're going to be talking a lot more of what's going on with the new comic books that are out there. So just so many great Rebirth titles. We couldn't get to all of them this one because we had 2 weeks worth of content to get to. And we really ran out of time. What we'll probably do is we're going to focus on the newest releases that are coming out, so we stay kind of current on what's going on, especially if they're new Rebirth issues. And then we will try to touch on as many series as we can along the way, because I want to really touch base on as many of these as we can again and again for at least the next couple months, because I want to see if the enthusiasm stays. Because we've talked a lot this episode about the reinvigorated enthusiasm, how this feels special. It feels like something different. The key to that is, does the momentum stay? And I want to talk about that because I think that's intriguing. And please feel free to call into the show to talk about that. How are these books, what books are maintaining your momentum? Which ones are surprising you by that? Are there any that are dropping off for you, and why? I think it's interesting topics, and I'd love to hear more from you guys on that. So please feel free to call in the shows with that kind of information. But we will talk to everyone next episode.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.